Andrea, like I never forget this moment sitting in the pool there. We were in the swimming pool there, and she says, "I thought you left us. Thought you left me." What happened was the Irish Aid volunteers who discovered the abuse of this particular man went out and found this girl, found her in a different jurisdiction, and videoed her testimony about what happened to her when she was 12 or 13. And I have that video now. I've sent it, and it's really, really disturbing. So the man is now dead. He is one of the founding members of that charity. The video is 22 minutes long, and it disclosed the graphic sexual abuse of that child, but it's talking about over the 22 minutes how she was groomed from the time she was 13, and that she'd never had sex before, never had any physical sexual contact with anybody, and how she was touched by this individual.
Was there surprise?
The chairman decided that he was going to go out himself and have a look. Okay, and he flew out without telling anybody and did a spot audit of the payroll. So, in his spot audit of the payroll, he discovered that
really fucking tension. You just put in the tension by doing that. Ed, how are you keeping?
Good, yourself?
Long time no see.
Been a while.
I can call you a friend of the show now.
A friend of the show?
Yeah.
Does that mean I got like commission on the OnlyFans side of things? Is it?
I haven't done an OnlyFans yet. I genuinely don't think I'd make any money on it. If I was, what do you think I should show? See? There you go. If you can't answer straight away, there's nothing. Anyway, what have you been at lately?
Not a whole lot and a whole lot at the same time. Not a lot I can actually think of.
Are you looking forward to Santa?
I'm looking forward to Santa Claus, all right. I'm looking forward to a bit of time off, yeah. So.
Do you have a lot of stress when you're putting up the decorations and stuff? Because today I was told to get the stuff out of the attic, and it took me all morning, and I had my oldest daughter give out to me for not being happy enough when I was taking it down, because I wasn't being festive enough.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of a bit Scroogey about stuff. I don't believe you should be putting decorations up in November anyway, for a start. So
I agree.
A little bit into December, it's fine. 6th, 7th of December, and then the kids start haranguing, saying they want them up. And
it's tough.
Want to start, yeah.
But have you ever done?
No, not at all. There's nothing up. No, nothing. It won't be up for around a week or so, yeah.
Andrea, have you any tree up?
No, I'm an 8th of December girl.
I thought you were going to say 80s.
Of course. No, nothing goes up before the 8th of December, and I will buy pre-lit, pre-decorated, out of a box, done.
Tree?
Yeah.
How would you do that?
It makes life so much easier to do the other things that are a lot more fun.
So can you can buy a tree fully decorated and just pop it up?
Yeah. And lit. Lights on it, everything, just plug it in.
I do not know. Is it a big tree?
Control.
Is it a small tree?
It's 7.5 foot.
Is it?
Well,
there.
we could do that.
There you go. We're after learning. See, women just taking us to school all the time. Ed, the last time you were on, we touched on a subject, and I just want you to give us a bit of background on it, and just tell us where we are on it.
Yeah, look, for a long time.
Keep this close to your.
Yeah, for a long time now. We've been meaning to tell the story, and we're kind of getting a bit worried now that it's becoming a distant memory of what happened. And I think it's important actually people hear the story, what happened when I was out in Moldova. So,
well, first of all, why were you out in Moldova? For anyone that wasn't listening.
Yeah, well, we'll start off that just to introduce you, Andrea Deering. Andrea's worked with me for God knows how long at this stage. Way too long. Yeah. I was ex-CEO of Nua Healthcare. I set up a big healthcare organisation. I was a social care worker by trade, 20 years. We sort of went into that in the last podcast. I sold the business back around 7 or 8 years ago, or longer, a bit longer, probably maybe 10. I sold it first, and then I stayed on for 3 or 4 years, and then eventually exited out of it. But Andrea came to work for me as a kind of she managing all my charitable activities. So if we set up this little foundation that would basically donate to different causes internationally and in Ireland, and Andrea basically ran all of those projects. So I'd come up with some of the crazy ideas, and Andrea would have to put them into reality. So it would be like, what would I call my bear Andrea's hands would do the actual hard work of what happened.
So if you were Tony Stark, she's Pepper Potts.
She's Pepper Potts,
Yeah.
With the notepad. Yeah. And I don't have the Iron Man suit yet. No, I might get the Iron Man suit.
I'm surprised you don't.
No, not yet. Anyway, but
do I get the outfit though? Do I get Pepper Potts?
As long as I get the Iron Man outfit, you can have Pepper Potts outfit if you want to. Yeah. So basically, look, a lot of stuff happened in Moldova from the time we got involved. Eventually led to adopting a child out there.
The charity in Moldova was specifically an orphanage and stuff, wasn't it?
Yeah, so basically, starting at the very beginning, so I had literally just sold my company a very short time, and I got invited by a friend of mine to a charity fundraiser of an orphanage, for an orphanage out in Moldova, an organisation called Outreach Moldova. And to be very clear, just at the outset, like a lot of stuff happened over the years, but to be absolutely clear, the donors who donated this charity were just amazing people, all absolutely amazing people, really generous, caring, loving people who just wanted to help young children who were orphaned. So at no stage did any of those donors do anything wrong at any point. So just to be clear on that as I tell this story. So I got invited to this charity fundraiser back, I think
April 2015.
2015, yeah, that was around. I wasn't long after selling the company, and I had a few quid in my back pocket, and I got invited to this big charity fundraiser. So we went to this ball. So the usual thing, black tie affair. You could buy things at auction. You could donate money, and we basically got told the story of this orphanage out in Moldova. Now, I had never heard of Moldova before. I knew nothing about Moldova. Didn't even know where it was. I'd never heard of it, but this organisation had a couple of Irish philanthropists, wealthy individuals who were really behind it and helping, and were looking to fundraise do this fundraiser. It's an annual fundraiser in the Shelburne. So I went to it then with my wife, and we basically got told the story like everybody else did about the plight of these young children who were basically abandoned. Now, at the time we were told there was 300 children living in this orphanage. We're shown videos on screen of basically children chained to radiators. It was harrowing stuff, like horrible, like kids dying because of the cold, of starvation, of malnutrition, horrible things after happening to them. But basically this charity, Outreach Moldova, was there to help and had done significant amount of works over the previous 10 years to actually ease the plight of these young children. So we were understandably taken by this. I'm a social care worker, like I'm a social care entrepreneur. So
and of course you have kids of your own, and when you see something like that,
you see something like that, you're really struck by it. So like I said, look, I had a few quid, so I said, look, I'll do something, and we were doing other projects for a long time. So I approached the CEO, Suzanne, quietly on the side, and just said, look, to backtrack, they were doing this program called the Nanny Program. So they were trying to fundraise €700 a year to fundraise a nanny for a child. So the job of a nanny for a child was to basically to spend time and give a child love and affection within the orphanage grounds. So they were doing this fundraiser where they wanted to raise €700 per child and raise 40 of them, and that was one of the things. So I went up to Suzanne and said, look, I'll do that. I'll do all of that. So I committed there and then to whisper to her, say, look, I'll give you €28,000 to do that. And she didn't really respond to me at the time, but she was busy. She was like...
She didn't know you?
Didn't know me, knew me through a contact.
Didn't know you were kind of a big deal at the time?
Didn't know it was a big deal. Yeah. Didn't know I had many leather-bound books in my...
and rich mahogany smells.
Smell. I wasn't wearing a robe at the time. Later.
Yeah.
So I approached her and said, look, I'll give you the money for this, and but I want to go out and see what you're doing. I want to see how I can help, because I was really struck by the story.
And it's what you did.
And it's what I did. It's like I set up care homes for adults and children. I've set up the biggest organisation in the country for care in Ireland. So I said, look, I'll have a go at helping you. It's not just about money all the time. A lot of these things, it's about the way you spend money, the way you do things. So committed to do this. And but then I didn't backtrack later on. I was concerned that if I spent 28,000 in 1 year for 40 nannies, I was worried about what would happen to those children in year 2 and year 3 and year 4. So if you spend all of this money in year 1 and these children get used to having
And
love
then
and affection,
you're making it worse.
and in year 2 you just pull them all away. We just went, well, look, that's not really a good idea to do. So how about we do a 7-year program, I said, or a 4-year program of 7, where we get 7 highly trained staff, we put them on your team, and we fund that over 4 or 5 years. So we discussed that. So I said, look.
And what was the feedback you were getting from her when you said stuff?
Yeah, cool, yeah, no problem, yeah, great. So
But the feedback I was getting was slightly different, which was, no, he committed to 28,000. We want 28,000.
Real blunt.
Oh, yeah.
Just the money.
Just the money, like, or you made this commitment, you're not going to honour it, can you not? Like, this is what you said you would do. I offered a written agreement for a 4-year programme or plan. I said that we were in it for probably a bit more than what we committed to, that we'd like to do more. This was just a starting point. But the answer was, well, we don't know you. We don't know if what you're saying is true. So you commit to 28,000, we want 28,000.
And did she not think you were relaying this back to Ed?
Well, very often we go into, well, look, because of the fact we run these projects in certain ways, like Andrea would get over all the detail, put the agreements in place, organise the transfer of the money, all that sort of stuff to the different charities. So that would be part of the course. That would happen anyway. And there would always be, like, whenever you were dealing with any sort of charity locally, there would always be a little bit of bun fighting around that. So, like, we had another program like that locally where there was key milestones and they had to do with it, and there was a bit of movement. So that's normal. So you expect all of that. Like, so you don't really worry about that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just what happens, you know. So ended up said, look, I'm going to go out. I'm going to have a look at what's going on out there.
You yourself?
Yeah. So myself and Andrea flew out to Moldova to have a look. So it's hard to describe. Like, you arrive into a country that feels like it's back in the 60s Ireland. It's like the decor is 1960s, the rugs, the curtains, there's panpipes playing in the airport. Everybody's like dressed like they are a little bit like duffel coats that look like further from the 80s of it. It's a really, really poor country. But you arrive into this country, the flight is the most god awful hour. Like, you get they fly out at 1 o'clock in the morning to Air Moldova. The air hostesses are as dour. They don't particularly like talking to you. I remember we used to go back and forth all the time for years, and then there was nobody on the plane, and I go and sit in one seat, and the air hostess would come up to me and go, "You move." There was no one on the plane. I said, "Look, I just moved to an aisle seat. Go back to your seat." And I go, "Well, there's no one on the plane. Go back to your seat now." And it was going to be like an international incident. Oh, I better go back to my seat. And then you'd see them around an hour or two later, their feet poking out the aisles that they had all gone to sleep down the end of the plane.
Oh, God.
But the plane would take off at 1 o'clock in the morning. He'd land around 5 or 6. He'd land in the dark on snow. It was a surreal experience, and you'd end up into this airport in the middle of nowhere. It just felt eerie, didn't it? It felt stark and eerie, you know. So we were collected by this guy, Yuri, on the first day. And he turned out to be like the personal assistant of Suzanne's CEO, and collected us and brought us out in the dark to along all of these roads, these city roads, out backside country, and brought us into this house. So we hadn't slept, so we were basically just brought to this house and give a shown where our rooms were, give a little kitchen. That's where we were pretty much contained for the whole time we were there.
We were managed. We
were just kept there all the time, basically in this one place. And like that, it's mad, because looking back, like, that was formed the entire view of Moldova, was this dark, stark
very
countryside,
unsafe.
Really unsafe. You couldn't
Did
go
they
outside.
push that? No,
it was never pushed, but it was kind of implied that, like, well, this is where you are, and
don't travel without us.
Yeah.
Make sure you let us know when you're coming over. We'll always make sure you are collected and brought here, and wherever you want to go, there's no problem, but we'll take you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we ended up in this house, right? And it was basically, we were kind of told that, look, the houses in Moldova, they're not really the same because it's like it's gone back in time, but they've wells out the front, right? They have outhouse toilets still in places, and some of them are sort of Western. So this house which came up over and over again throughout the story, this particular house, but the house was modified to look westernized. So it had a toilet in it, had a bathroom in it, it had all those sort of modern comforts that we would know in Ireland. But the house was conveniently located, like probably around 400 or 500 meters from or maybe a kilometer from the entrance to the orphanage, which we went into. So we went there. We gathered ourselves together. I think we had there was a bit of a sleep, and you slept it off because you were through the night, and I got brought over to the orphanage. Now you're driving up in the snow to these like big gates with security on them.
And snow it's 8 foot high.
Okay.
Yeah,
and you have 5-6 inches of ice on the roads.
Yeah, and they're just business as usual. They're just getting on with things. They're just going like the planes are landing on thick ice and they're getting off, and no one's batting an eyelid in this place. You're landing the planes in like thick fog and no one cares. It's just like
we sent them a few photos of the snow here. When the country closed down, they just laughed.
That's cute.
I think it's hilarious. Yeah. So we go up to the entrance of this orphanage, and the security on the gates, and we're brought in. So basically, the orphanage was structured with 3 blocks. So there were 3 large sort of rectangular blocks of accommodation, 3 stories each, block A, B, and C. And the children were sort of divided into levels of severity. There was like really sort of severe to profound children with learning disabilities or physical disability, learning disabilities. There was
hydroencephaly and things like that.
Yeah, kids who were like life-limiting conditions, who would need to be peg-fed and high medical condition and all stuff. But there was also kids who were like autistic, but there was a lot of adults. They weren't kids really. It was kind of always told that there's 300 kids, but the majority of them were adults. Actually, they had sort of aged out, and stayed on in this place. So there was basically 300 people in this one centre. I think it was 267 or something like that.
Well, we were told 383.
Yeah.
But the official records actually showed there was less than 200 at the time.
Right.
But we just didn't know that.
Yeah. So there was three blocks. So we got brought into this block, and I think it was block A. Was block A? Was it, or block C?
Block C.
Block C. Sorry. So there's block C. So in block C there was 3 floors. So there was varying levels of ability and disability on each floor. And in block C, on the ground floor, the charity outreach Moldova had sort of created a special unit, they called, which was, what did they call it again? It was not the training unit, or
was it the independent?
The project. The project.
The project.
Yeah, they called it the project. So the project basically had 13 children who lived in one particular area. It was like a corridor of it, and those children were quite able to talk. A lot of them spoke English. They were. We later came to know that. Well, I later called them the marketing department, basically, of the chart. It sounds terrible, but I'll tell you a lot about what happened. But basically, there was a bunch of children there who spoke English and who could communicate. So we were kind of based there. So we got to know these 13 children with various levels of issues.
Well, that was where we were initially supposed to stay, but you went on a
I went on a bit of I went on a recce mission around to try to find out what was sort of going on.
You wanted to see the whole hospital and what was going on.
Yeah. So in the evening time, we were kind of let stay there with these children. Some of them were quite independent and they could cook and do stuff. Some of them prepared meals for us, and the kids were basically just chatting to us. So they had like a sitting room, a kitchen, and then they had like a dormitory area for the older kids, and then 2 small rooms for the younger children, 2 younger children, Litsa and Andrea.
At the time you had just over 6.5-year-old, 7-year-old, and then varying ages right up to 36.
You're living in this one sort of location, So we were sort of introduced to those. We were kind of kept there for the whole day and got to know these kids. Like, got pictures of them, of our interactions.
Were you allowed to walk around the hospital to get a look around?
Not really.
We talk to staff.
We were kind of kept there, But then in the evening time, because we had nothing really to do, we were just kind of kept there. Like, across the tour, we were brought around that facility, shown the medical units. We were told about what the charity did around the we were basically told that the charity was funding operations for all these children, life-saving operations on children with the severe to profound disabilities. Kids with cerebral palsy were given sort of limb lengthening or sort of surgeries to make their cerebral palsy easier.
Did the surgeries happen there?
The surgeries happened. We found out they happened in the hospital in the centre. But basically, it was told to us that the charity was doing all of this and it was funding all of this.
Well, the mantra that was repeated is without the charity, these children will die.
So, look, we were like in the evening, the first evening, I think it was the first or the second evening because it's a long time ago now. So some of the days and they blend in. But the first evening, we spent an awful lot of time with these children. I was really struck by a young girl called Lunitza. She was gorgeous little thing. She was real chirpy and happy and lovely. And I had an Irish sort of cap, and she used to steal the cap and wear the cap. She was a dote of real cute, and so we spent time with those girls and in that area for the evening time. And come around 7 or 8 o'clock, the staff went home and sort of left us. After they said we could stay there if we wanted, so I went for a little bit of a wander around to just sort of see what was happening, because no one stopped me to walk around, because I wanted to see just as a social care professional or as a carer what was happening. So like I went upstairs and it was a much different situation upstairs on the other floors. It wasn't as westernized. It was like a dormitory situation. There was dormitories down below as well, but imagine they're like all Snow White and the Seven Dwarf beds. There was all beds with the same blanket. They had shelving at the end with everybody's clothes all in the one place. It was like they always said in institutions in Ireland, it was first up, best dressed.
16, 20 beds.
16, 20 beds in a row, and then there was a TV room right at the end where all the children would be kind of sitting around, and then a place for them to eat. And I never forget it. Like I remember there's this sort of babushka woman comes in with a big bucket, and it was dinner time, 7 o'clock-ish or so, and a woman comes in with like a bucket and a ladle and a thing of like porridge.
Yeah, in fairness, it was a clean bucket.
A clean bucket, yeah, a bucket and a bucket. Like it was dinner time. It was like a massive pot, a bucket of like porridge or oats or whatever it was, and she just sort of went around, and all of these children just sitting perfectly quietly all around this table, just waiting to be fed to get.
That was the eerie bit. They were so quiet.
It was so quiet.
As a professional that does that sort of thing, did that raise red flags with you, or did you just think they're really struggling as a charity?
No. That was normal. This was the state of the institution. That's what it was. That's what was happening. The charity wasn't providing. The charity was augmenting the services of the institution. So they were an organisation called Outreach Moldova, sitting in a part of the institution. They ran a day service. They had like a day service there. They had an office for Suzanne. They had like a cook. They had their support staff that were there, and it was here to where they were supposedly running all of the programs from, and running all the volunteers out of their little building that they had on the site. So like what was going on in the orphanage was pretty horrible, but that was what it was. Like that's what it was, an orphanage. It was managing all of these children in one place. They did get fed at the same time. They had very little to do in winter times. There wasn't a whole lot to be done outside, so all of their activities were centred around inside. So
I think when we had a chat about it that first evening, it was just realising that they had clean clothes, they seemed the place was warm, they were well fed, but beyond that, that's about what they were getting.
But it was stark.
Physical care.
Yeah, but it was stark. Like it was what you'd envisage an orphanage to be: long corridors, very institutionalised, children not having much to do, watching TV all day. And then there was this charity in the middle of it. It was an Irish charity. It was trying to do their best and augment what was going on there and make it better for the kids. So we were like sold. This is...
I can help here.
I can help here. We can do something. But we can do something about it. But like the reality, like if you go look, we're starting to think about, well, look, should kids or adults in this day and age be in a situation like this at all? They're not in Ireland. Like children who require care, it's very rare for a child to go into care under 12 in Ireland, and it's quite rare for a child like people like of all the people with physical and intellectual disabilities in the country, is a very, very small amount of people who are in any sort of residential care at all. Like they get home support, they get home care, they get interventions at home supposedly long before they need it. It doesn't always happen, but there's no reason in a modern society where children or adults need to live in those situations anymore. They can live in the community with supports. So we started to get our thinking caps on, going, look, well, how can we change this? But we're really struck by this, about how difficult this was for these children, these adults living in this situation. So in the other parts of it where the kids were living in the project, these 13 kids, they were saying, well, these kids were a bit more privileged in that they had the support of the donors. They were investing in this particular area with this day service, so that looked very proactive. And it looked like a great project to be involved in.
And the setting even looked like an apartment more than an institution. Yeah,
and during the time, like while we were being shown around, we saw all of the volunteers who I had funded. So we were specifically introduced to them all. They had Outreach Moldova t-shirts on. And I was even sort of awkwardly, I have a picture of it here somewhere, but I was kind of awkwardly brought into a room with them all.
And a picture taken.
And a picture taken with all of them. And the 40 nannies gave me a kiss on the cheek and said thank you on the way out. Like, thank you. Or
if you're watching on YouTube, the picture's going to be up there.
We did wonder, though, who would be working the next day if they were all in that day.
Yeah, I have the picture here on the screen, so I'll send it.
Yeah.
But basically, all of these people were introduced to us. And some of them, actually, people in the photograph I still recognise as key staff that we knew throughout the years and after that. So there was a specific incident that stood out, like, sorry.
The baby hospital as well.
Yeah, we were shown around a baby hospital, which was really eerie. That was really sad.
In a different area or in that
it was
hospital?
in a different place. We were brought somewhere else into the city and shown a baby hospital, which we were led to believe, well, we believed that it was being funded by Outreach Moldova because that's why we were there, having a look around it.
Who took you there? They did?
We were taken by the CEO out there and the PA to be shown around it. So we walked around that for a while, and that was eerie because, like, instead of having beds, they had cots, and they had a room full of cots, and the babies and the young kids just sort of, like, as they do in institution settings, they just sat there looking at you, like,
no crying,
don't cry, like, don't cry, don't reach out because they're not used to getting any sort of attention like that, so that would break your heart, like, going around and seeing this sort of stuff. But yeah, we heard some stories about, I don't know whether it was that visit or another visit, we heard some stories about some foster care programs that were working on getting kids out of the system before they needed residential care now. So the Moldovans were looking to actively to try develop that. But we didn't, I don't know if we talked about that another time, but we walked around, had a look around this, and that was really...
I think when we found the press with all the perfect toys still in the wrapping.
Yeah, there was a shelf. That was, I remember that.
Yeah.
There was a shelf with the toys but up high. And all the children were tiny, like, so they couldn't reach the toy. There was just all toys, still in the wrapping.
And the staff
on the box.
were very proud that they had kept them all intact and they were all still perfect.
Yeah. No one playing with them.
No.
So we opened them all.
Yeah,
that's mad.
So we were shown that, and one of the most, like, this one of the biggest memories I have of this whole project, and it just followed through, was like when we were struck by some of these children. There was two younger children there, Andrea, who I didn't really get to know, who subsequently eventually adopted. And there's another little kid called Lunitsa, who she was a lovely, happy little child. But she was sitting on my lap one day. We're just chatting to everybody in a room, and Suzanne turned around to me. She said, "Oh, look, I don't know how."
There was a video call.
Was a video?
Yeah, she was in Ireland or something.
Yeah.
That day, that particular day.
She wasn't around. That's why we were being shown around.
And it was a video call, and she said she was quite shocked to see her on your knee on the video call.
Yeah, how, like, that child, this is really unusual. Like, she'd never warmed to men like that. She's adverse to men, and basically led into the story about how this poor child's mother had been beaten to death in front of her. And that's why she was so traumatized by this, and that somehow she'd made an exception. She was afraid of men previously, but she wasn't afraid of me. So I remember, actually, look, I've been around the block care-wise. I've worked with some of the most difficult situations in the country and challenged behaviour and care and learning disabilities in the country. But we went back to that house that night, and I cried myself to sleep that night about that child.
Well, after we...
Well, not cried. I had a bit of a cry. I don't think I cried myself to sleep, but I had a...
We're going to go with you cried yourself to sleep.
Well, we did...
You big pussy.
Some bottles of wine as well.
Yeah. We had some wine, and I cried over that. I was really, really disturbed by that.
I don't think any parent can watch that. And then I think when it's in your power to try and help, it's a lot. It's heavy.
Yeah. But interestingly, well, that particular moment solidified my mission in terms of helping. I said, I'm going to do something about this by hook or by crook. And we left deciding that, no, this is a bigger project for us. This is something that we need to do. And I need to look again.
If you're going to do it, you're going to do it right.
I'm going to do it right. And I'm going to go back and think about, well, look, how can we do things right over there? And I really wasn't happy about what was going on with the nannies, because I saw what they were doing, and the nannies were quite unskilled. The activities that they were doing was like they were standing beside children but shaking rattles in their face and sort of like stroking their hair and brushing their hair and stuff. And look, and that's nice and that's great and it's lovely, and the children have some sort of physical contact and all, but in Ireland, we have training courses like FTTT level 5s for sort of care skills. We can train these people how to be good carers, to be more engaging with these children. We can do all sorts of stuff other than combing hair and shaking rattles and cuddling. We can do all sorts of stuff. So those staff could be really put to work in a much better way. So that was one thing we identified. And another was that, well, maybe these children shouldn't be living in this place at all. Maybe they should be living in the community. And what's to stop us getting a couple of houses out in the community and just transferring those staff into care staff in the community and moving the children altogether out of the orphanage and closing the orphanage down, long term.
Yeah. And this isn't something you're making up in your head. This is something that's tried and tested and worked.
Yeah. And like what struck is like the amount of money that had gone into this charity by these amazing donors over the years.
Had you known at that time how much had been put into it?
No, but we figured there was in excess of 10 million euros gone into this orphanage over a period of 15 years before we got involved. Was it?
Yeah, we looked at the filings of the CRO to have a look at what was declared as income for the charity for the previous 10 years, and it was 12.5 million.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's a lot of money. Like I eventually hired a psychologist to work for me over there, and she was getting around 3,000 euros a year was the
so
salary.
it's a lot of money in Moldova.
So 3,000 was a salary, an annual salary for a psychologist.
Wow.
Well,
in Moldova.
If you look at the current rate, the equivalent of a high court judge over there right now would be on 8,000 to 10,000 euro a year.
Yeah.
So this is a substantial amount of funds going to a place.
So 12 million went into this organisation, went into this building in the preceding years that we got involved. So, and we figured you could buy a house for not very much over there. You could fund these care staff, because at the time the care staff were getting paid around 700 euros a year.
Fuck.
So you could basically theoretically close the orphanage down, retrain everybody,
and be more financially viable.
More financially viable in the longer term, but you're also not institutionalizing children and adults. You could change it. So we said, look, we said we'd come up with this program, this program, a much bigger program than the original 28,000, and said, look, let's.
When you came back to her with this program, were you dealing with the CEO yourself?
Yeah. So they were delighted. They were absolutely delighted. So like we said, look, I went back and said, look, I've been really struck by what's happened here. I'm really affected by it. I want to help. I want to change. I've got the skills to help. We've got funds to help. So we said we'd commit to doing 3 houses, a day service. I don't know if the day service was in the original agreement, but we eventually we did agree that we'd do that. We'd also look at translating all of the training programs that Nua Healthcare had into Romanian, and retraining all of their social care staff. Actually, subsequently, the government of Moldova adopted all of the training programs, and every social care worker in Moldova is now trained with Nua Healthcare training programs now. It's pretty cool. But we said we'd do a threefold project. One, we'd do this program where we'd get these houses, we'd look at these 13 children moving out, 13 adults and children moving out. We'd get some houses to do that, and we needed to show these children that like they could live independently, that they weren't going to live like this forever, and that Irish children lived a different life than this. So we set up a project where we took all those children to Ireland. So we said we'd bring them to Ireland for a trip, which was
ultimate school tour firm.
Ultimate school tour. So we bring them and we'd bring them to Nua. We bring them and show them in Nua how other kids with learning disabilities live in Ireland and what life they live, and say, well, why can't you live this life too? And we're going to do this program for you. We're going to train staff. We're going to do all this. And
we brought 7 staff with us, and and 2 government workers as well.
Yeah,
to show them what their role could possibly be.
Yeah, so we had this. So it's a threefold project: train everybody, get some units, have a day service, and then show all these children and staff how things work in Ireland.
We also at that stage wanted it to be part in partnership with the government.
Yeah, and that's that was a big thing, because I said, look, as a private citizen and philanthropist, I'm not going in there and funding Moldova to look after its own citizens. So I says, I don't mind helping you set it up, but I want meetings with the Minister for Health. I want the meetings with the government to say, well, look, if I set this up, you're going to fund it. You're going to actually fund you're going to fund the day-to-day costs of those staff. Like, I don't want to end up running a private care facility for children in Moldova. Like, they're your citizens. They're not our citizens. They're not our citizens. So that was part of the deal, that we'd set up this this bipartisan agreement with the government to say that they'd fund it. So that's what we set about doing. So the first protocol was to actually bring these children to Ireland. Like, for a long time, like in the early stages, we discussed my partner about whether we'd adopt a child from there, but we'd 3 already, and it was just like we couldn't face. We actually talked about Lenitsa, the young girl, to see whether we could consider adopting her, and at the time we thought, look, it's just too much to take on. I was very busy, I was working all the time. This child had significant needs, physical and intellectual needs. She needed care. She didn't only care, but she needed significant needs.
There's also a sponsor that was in place.
Yeah, and there was a sponsor already in place who had looked at like sponsoring that child, the significant beneficiary of the thing. So I decided no, wouldn't do it. But we do our best to try support the children out there. So during the trip, the children came over, all 13 children and adults came over, and they did Santi. They went to the Butler's Chocolate Factory. They did a tour of Ireland. They went to Nua. They went to Nua's Christmas show. They did a big Moldovan dance. It was incredible. It was absolutely incredible trip. But during that trip, one of the little girls who I didn't really notice before, my family, we were all out with these. We were out with all of these children, having dinner with them and stuff. And one of my then 4-year-old or 5-year-old Morgan, he was only little. He's now huge fella. But at the time, he was sort of sitting and play acting, joking. He was always a joker. And there was another little girl called Andrea who was sitting beside him. One of the babies. She was like 7 or 8 at the time. 8, I think, at the time. When Morgan spilt his drink all on her or something, and he started, like as a 5-year-old would, burst into tears. And went, just burst into tears. And then Andrea, the little girl, sort of grabbed a tea towel or sort of like a thing and started mopping his tears away and saying, it's okay, you're going to be okay, it's fine. She hardly speak any English, but she sort of went in, and like myself and my wife just looked and went.
That was when you.
We have to take her, yeah.
Well.
Yeah, so we did. So at that time, I said, so there was 2 things happening. So we had this big project going on, but also we decided, well, we're going to adopt this child. So unfortunately, it's not as straightforward as that. So nothing ever is. So decide to do that. We have a great time. They go back to Moldova. I make a commitment. I said, no, we're going to take that child. Myself and my wife, we said, we're going to take that child. And we're going to get it. We're going to do what we can to get her. So we met Rita, Dr. Rita, and Suzanne at the CEO, and said, no, we're going to...
Dr. Rita would be
the sort of second in command of the charity. She's a Moldovan lady, doctor, who was working. So I met the two of them actually in Laois, in Jim's kitchen, believe it or not, in Laois. Met for a bite to eat, talking about the fact that we're going to do this. So the two of them kind of sat there sort of delighted, happy about this, and we're kind of, and I said, well, look, just keep this on the lowdown. Like, this might not happen. Like, it's not an easy process. So just keep this on the lowdown.
And plus, Suzanne had adopted 2 children
Yeah.
from Moldova herself. So it just made sense to ask her what was the process.
Yeah, but she was actually a Moldovan citizen. She had married a Moldovan man. So the process for her to adopt, she's an Irish citizen.
It was more straightforward
It was way straightforward because she was a citizen of Moldova. She could do it. So, so adopting somebody is difficult, So you can't. This is just the system is just broken. So decided to do this. We ring up the Adoption Authority of Ireland and say, look, want to adopt this child. Like, met this gorgeous little girl. She has cerebral palsy. She's no home. She's no parents. She doesn't. She's nowhere to go. So, we want to sort out. He said, yeah. Well, look, that's brilliant. It's great to hear that. Lovely. There's an information evening in 6 months' time. Come to that. And we can talk to you about adoption. And I'm going
6 months.
I said, what are you talking about? No, so we need to do it now. And then no, information evening, whatever, in 3 or 4 months.
But on top of that, there was also there's no adoption agreement between Ireland and Moldova at the time. So could you pick a different child in a different country?
Pick a different child, pick a different country. You can't do that because, like, there's this thing called the Hague Agreement where if you arrive back in Ireland with a child adopted from another country in the Hague list of countries, and once it's one of those Hague list of countries, you can legally adopt them. You can legally transfer the adoption into an Irish adoption. But if you set out to yourself that you want to go and adopt a child, you're either given a list of 6 countries that the government has an inter-country agreement with.
And you're not to choose the child yourself.
And you can't choose the child yourself. You can fill out in a form what you don't want and you do want. And very few people are write on a form, well, I want a child with this, I want a child with that. So that really makes it very difficult for a child with sort of any sort of needs to get adopted ever. Like my gorgeous daughter, she has very mild physical, she needs a wheelchair some of the time, but she can walk. She's very independent, she's very able, but she wouldn't get picked out on a form, sadly. So there was loads of children who were there who wouldn't have never got picked, because you would never pick, I want a child with cerebral palsy, I want a child with this issue, I want a child with this issue. So, and
unfortunately the description would be high needs, whereas we met some children who had very mild Down syndrome even.
Yeah, and would be like very independent, a lot of them. So we had the situation where you couldn't adopt from this country anyway because there was no inter-country agreement. So they weren't a listed by-part agreement. So and TWFTT, excuse me, wouldn't facilitate this whole process unless you went through their process. So you had to. Their process was that you went to an information briefing. You decided after the briefing, yes, you want to proceed. You then go to a course. You do the course. You then
and these are all on their timelines.
Yeah. You go to the course.
You're a certified good parent now.
Yeah. You get approved with the court. Then you get assessed by a social worker. And at this point in time, I'm hitting the roof because like we're both going like, this is crazy. Like this is going on for years. This is going on for a long time.
So you had to just go with it.
So we had to go. So this process ran in tandem with everything that was going on with the charity. So like this process was going on. So like all I could commit to doing. Well, in terms of the adoption process, what I had to do was basically convince the Irish government and the Adoption Authority of Moldova, the Adoption Authority of Ireland, to take on Moldova as a seventh country, right? And they eventually were going like no. So I ended up.
And in addition, there was only one adoption authority who would deal with special needs kids.
Yeah. So there was no organisation in Moldova that would handle it. There was no organisation in Ireland that would handle it, and the Adoption Authority of Ireland wouldn't do it. So we had to set up an organisation in Ireland, or in Moldova.
No. We had to register the Irish organisation that was here in Moldova.
Yeah.
Because they must have a registered office in Moldova to receive children.
Yeah, so we had to go through all of this process to get these these organisations set up to send, set up to receive, set up to assess, convince the Adoption Authority of Ireland to let us do it, which they were going, no, you're not fucking doing it, and we're not paying for it because it was a cost. So eventually it culminated in me going legal or getting legal advisors and getting a barrister and a solicitor and everybody involved.
You can't offer to cover the cost because then you're buying a child. So you can't do that either.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So it culminated eventually in a meeting between myself, my partner, my legal barrister on one side, the solicitor on the other, and around 7 or 8 adoption authority officials on the other side of the table. Now, I was going into that meeting being told by legal advisors that they don't really want to do this. This is just not on their radar to do. You're not doing this. So there was a fight, right? There was a fight at the table anyway between the legal advisor and everybody at the table about what was going on. And eventually I kind of lost it a bit, and I just interrupted everybody. I said, look, you don't realise something. I said, I've literally just sold my business around a year. This is the type of person I am. I am literally going to sit outside your door every day until you do this. So you can either have me sitting on your doorstep for the next 3 years, every day, looking at you until you do this, or you can just do it now and save yourselves the hassle.
You John Wick them.
Yeah, and two of the ladies at the table started laughing. Started laughing on the other side, right? And then basically they adjourned the meeting and then came back and gave us approval to set up the whole structure so long as I paid for it. And I paid
Hallelujah.
for the system. Yeah.
We're delighted.
I was delighted, but like the reality is, I remember it being said to me by a social worker, and it was a bit snotty to be honest, it was said to me. I rang up the social worker and I said, oh look, I'm after being successful, I've got this 7th or 8th country on the list of countries that you can adopt from. And she said, what you say? Oh, money talks, doesn't it? Well, for you anyway, doesn't it? This was a social worker in the adoption authority who said that to me. Money talks, for you. And this is the sad thing, it did. And it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter how much resources you have to be able to adopt a child in Ireland. You shouldn't just be able to do it just because you have a few quid, you know? You should be able to just do it just because you have a place in your family for a child with needs, and you can take somebody. I think they shut everything down, really. They were very sensitive about the sort of the post-Ceausescu area where loads of people went into Romania and took children back. And a lot of children who had significant needs back 20 years ago ended up coming into the care system later with all sort of attachment disorder issues and all.
They had an issue in 2006 and again in 2012 with their adoptions going to foreign countries, and unfortunately there were some countries who were adopting children or fostering children with special needs and sending them back after organ donation.
So there was all sorts of scandals about it, so they were jittery.
And so they suspended all adoptions in Moldova at the time. Okay. So they were very, very
nervous to open
the red tape was extreme, but we could understand why. And there was a very particular way of doing things, and there was no cutting corners. You did it the way they said they wanted it, down to you must sign everything in blue pen. You must sign all stamps, official stamps must be in the top right-hand corner, 1 inch from the edge of the paper. If they're not straight or they're not there, they send back the paperwork. And
I remember going to like a notary public, whatever, and they had this guy's the most hilarious signature in the world, because he used to be like he had around like 50 O's after every single thing, and it was something about them being terrified that someone was going to force their signature. But every document he had to sign, he had to do the 50 O's after it. It just to take hours, and you'd be sitting there going like, "Fuck, could the guy ever hurry up? Come on, fuck's sake, I have to go." And he'd be there signing with all of his O's. Well, we got through this process. And
while this is all going on and you're busy doing all that, is the charity still getting funded by you and your...
Yeah. So
we were travelling over once a month.
Yeah, we were travelling over. So in terms of like my daughter, Andrea, we had decided at that point she was our daughter no matter what. And even if it was going to take 2 to 3 years to do the adoption, or 4 years, or whatever it was going to take to do the adoption, we're going to do it no matter what it took. Now, that turned out to be the hardest thing we've ever done. It was just so difficult. It was so difficult to do. But we committed in the short term to basically provide...
What was most difficult about it?
Just the fighting and the hassle and the aggro of like administration. The Irish were fighting you, the Moldovans were fighting you. Everybody just was like, just Christ, you just got this kid has needs as a family. We can mind this child. We can do everything for this child.
There's a particular meeting that is held once a year on one day in the entire year in Moldova, where the committee sit to approve applications for adoption authorities. And if you don't have your paperwork in within 2 weeks before that date, you have to wait an entire year to be heard again, with no exceptions. So the stress, we had to have it in by the 15th of January. So the Christmas period over there is the 8th of January. So you're here during Christmas, here on the 25th, trying to get people to sign documents, get them notarized, then get them translated, then get the translation notarized, and then get them registered, get them over there. And then if you don't have them over there in time, they're all gone on Christmas holidays. And you've missed the date, and you're coming back saying to a family who's trying to adopt a child, so I'm sorry, we missed it by 3 hours. It wasn't registered in the chancellery, so we have to wait another year.
So at the time, I won't say his full name, but there was a man, a very generous man, who was he was a healthcare CEO in Ireland, and he adopted 2 children from Haiti, or no, he was
just another country.
Yeah, he's another country, another on the list. And he told me, he said, Ed, just do what you can for the child in the meantime, but it might not happen. Like, you might not get through this. It's just too hard. He eventually didn't get through the process in one of these children, and the child died. And he said, so do what you can, because they'll fight you. So I just said, well, look, I don't give up. I don't stop with these things. I'm like a bit of a psychopath when it comes to getting tasks done and things done. So I'll keep going things to the bitter end until I get it done.
Yeah, but also you're watching the child getting older and asking questions. Why can't I stay? Why can't I come home with you?
And this is like what we decided to do during that period of time, myself and Jade, was to do the best we could for the best we could for the child during that period of time. So we took her out of the orphanage immediately. We rented a house in the local community for her. We hired a staff team. So I created a small care home. Well, she was one of the 13 anyway, so we were moving the first bunch of kids out. Andrea was one of those kids that came out in the first batch.
She was attending mainstream school as well.
Yeah, I put her in a private school over in Moldova. We managed to hire somebody who would agree to travel to Ireland during all school holidays and all this. So it was basically like she was in boarding school. So Andrea used to travel over at Christmases, used to come over at summer holidays, used to travel together, go to holidays in Spain. So she became part of the family during all of that period of time. Over the course of the full timeline of what happened, she was basically like she was in boarding school 4 or 5 months of the year.
We never want to do a visa application ever again.
No. Trying to get visas. Like, I got to, like, even COVID hit in the middle of this, which was horrific because they shut down, couldn't get her out, ended up having to try to get her into a Schengen country, which is Spain. So we used to fly her into Spain, meet her in Spain, go on the family holidays there. So it was just so, like, it was worth it. Of course it was worth it, but it was so difficult over that period of time. So, like, we had this set up, and while we were waiting for the adoption to happen and to go through all those processes that we had to go through.
Pilot houses for the project.
Yeah.
And so, while all this was happening, how was things going with the charity? And
so the program that we committed to, I think it was circa, I don't know how much it was going to cost in the end, but like I think I had it in my head that it was going to cost around €500,000 to do the project. I think we eventually got around €200,000 in-ish in what we had spent. And things just started to not add up, like when we were all...
Well, pretty much immediately once the pilot house was set up.
Yeah, so like we set up the first pilot house and we got the budgets through and we got all of these. We agreed the budgets, we agreed the funding for it.
The budgets came from Outreach Moldova.
They sent us through the budgets, what it would cost to run staff. So you'd be looking through all these budget lines and like eventually I'm going... One, like it was weird, the staff were terrified of her. Terrified. They were just absolutely terrified. Like, I'd be sitting with the kids and talking to them when we'd be over there, and they'd hear that the CEO was coming along, and they just jump. They were terrible. I was like, I'm not talking. This is the same person. I'm like, I know this person's grand. She's lovely. She's like, only people are afraid of her jumping and everything. And
they used to beg us not to be friends with her.
Yeah, be friends with her. Don't annoy her. Don't make things right. Don't get angry. This is the Moldovan people saying this to us. And so I said, this is weird. But I remember, I said, I understand the cost lines of what it takes to run a care facility. I understand. I've done it. I've set up. The first unit I set up with NUA, I did all the staffing. I did all the HR stuff. I ran the thing myself. I was the staff member in it. I was staff one. I did all the work. I was able to hire another person, build the organisation that way. So I'm looking at this care home and I'm going, where's the driver? I said, where's that guy? In the budget line. So I'd be picking out the budget line and going, I have a budget line here, and I'm there going, it doesn't really add up. So I went to Suzanne and I said, look, Suzanne, your budget doesn't really add up here. And I said, look, and I said, but look, just to be absolutely clear, I said, look, everybody in this sort of situation would fudge the budget a little bit, because, you need a little bit of fat in your budgets just in case you have a bit of extras or stuff that you need. But I said, but where's the driver? And he went, oh, there is a driver. He's here. And I said, there's no driver. I said, the driver's your PA. That guy there, he's your PA guy. No, that's not your driver. And I said, the other driver is your husband, and he's the maintenance guy. And I go, no, you're wrong. And I said,
was she getting angry with you? Was she?
You're kind of getting impatient with me, and going, well, no, you're not seeing it. This is what it is, and everything. And I kind of was like going, oh, it's not right, but I was kind of going, oh, well, look, it's fine, it's okay, it's not right, and I got pissed off with the nanny thing, the program first when I arrived off, because I arrived over and was introduced to all 40 of them, and I told them I didn't want 40, I told them I wanted 7 of years, but they did it anyway, and I kind of turned a blind eye to it then, because I was kind of I was on the train. I was on for the ride. Now I was going to do it. I was going to.
You didn't want to be going in and starting rows straight away either, did you?
No, I didn't want to upset the apple cart. We're going into a bigger project. You were helping kids. You were basically, and that's the problem really. Everybody that got involved with this, these beautiful people, generous people, left their sense and sensibilities at the door. They basically came in. These were really big, successful business people in Ireland who were titans of business, who had run massive, really, really clever business people. But when it came to coming over and talking to the orphans, they were going, here's my money, take my money, just help the children. Here, take the children, help the children with it. And you're an angel, you take this money. So this person was basically portrayed as this angel and savior of these children. And that was how all of the donors looked at the charity and looked at her as the saviour of everybody that was there.
And the government was doing nothing to help their children.
Yeah, the government was terrible. They were doing nothing. They never helped. They were leaving their children to die, and this Irish charity were coming in and saving the day. So when you went to the charity fundraise, it was all about saving lives. This was a really good thing to be involved in. This was an amazing thing. But I remember we started to get friendly with all of the Moldovan people as well. We started to make friends with all these people.
Plus you were in the community.
We were in the community.
You were in the house, the schools.
So I had a guy works for me. He's Ukrainian. He's worked for me for a long time, 15 years, and he speaks Russian. And there was a girl who was working for me doing the program. She was bringing Andrea over. So she pulled him aside and said, Edward needs to leave. Edward needs to get away from this. And he says, what? He says, he came to me and told me, he says, she's after having a conversation with me and says, you need to leave, you need to get out of here. And I says, you are basically being taken for a big ride here. He said, these people, one, we were told that the volunteers were being brought in off the fields and brought in for when the Irish came over on their visit and their tours.
Which flights were organised by Suzanne because she could get us a better deal.
Yeah. Well, look.
So really, it was
when we were arriving.
We can only say what we think or what we believe, or I'm not accusing anybody of doing anything. People make their own determination. I can only talk about what my experience of things were and what I was told and what I believe and what I saw. So I was told directly by that these people were being brought in and given T-shirts and being put in the orphanage to shake the rattles and be there on display when the Irish came over.
To show how much staff and to show
So many
who was
staff
there.
that they had and who was there. And she also said, you will never adopt that child. They will never let you adopt that child. Because once you adopt that child, they think you will leave. You'll never be
back again.
You'll never be back again. You'll get what you want. You'll take the child. You'll leave. You won't be a sponsor anymore. You've done. They want to keep you spending. They want to keep all the donors spending. So I was like, oh, this is like, and again, I don't even know whether that was a point where it turned around, but I can tell you the biggest point where this turned around, this whole situation turned around, was when we were talking about Lenitsa one day.
This is the other little girl.
The little girl, Lenitsa.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we were in a sort of a routine meeting talking about care, about whatever, and then it came up, we were talking about sort of foster care programs for the younger children and all sorts of stuff, and it came up in conversation that Lenitsa's mother rocked up to the orphanage trying to take her back. So
she's not dead.
So she's not dead, right? So like I'm going,
it's America.
I'm there going, I said, what the fuck? What's just happened here? And I said, oh, no. And I was, you told me a year and a half ago or 2 years ago that child's mother was beaten to death in front of her. And that's why she was so traumatized with men. She said, oh, I never said that. I said, you fucking did say that.
And it was imprinted in your brain.
It was imprinted in my bed because I went home and I cried myself to sleep, like I said, like a fully grown man that I was, that night in that house, thinking that child would suffer that trauma. And notwithstanding that same story was told to the main charitable benefactor, the other guy, the exact same story about the same thing that happened.
So it was like when people came over, this was the show, child came on, they told you a horrific story just to have you hooked, just to pull at your heartstrings.
Yeah. So that happened, and that story was told to me by her absolutely 100%, and it was told to the other donor too. And it turned out that this poor child's mother was a significant amount of these children ended up in the orphanage, not because they were orphaned, but because their parents, or their parents, some of them were quite young. They were 17, 18-year-old kids who couldn't mind a child with a disability in a situation where there was no running water, there was no heating. Like some of these local sort of townhouses, like they had no heating, they had fires, they had a toilet out the back. So if you were presented with a child with cerebral palsy, you were goose. How are you going to wash that child? How are you going to get the child around? Wheelchair accessibility didn't exist. It was funny, they used to concrete in slopes on the steps over in Moldova in places like to basically wheel the wheelchair up. You go down kamikaze ramps. So if you this poor child's mother had issues but rocked up trying to take her back and wanted to take her back.
Or even just visiting.
Or just visit.
It was made difficult.
And we were told that well, not only were we told that, but I don't know where you were told that, was it like that woman is never going near that child. I'm never going to allow that woman to go near that child.
She told me that herself that night.
Who did?
Suzanne.
Yeah.
Said I will make sure she never, ever gets that child back.
Why?
Her belief was her belief to me at the time, is what she said to me, was that she can't look after her, she can't take care of her, and Lenitsa's better off here. She told me she was a raging alcoholic. She would probably sell her child, that she has an older child that she sells as well. And I'm going, oh my God, sex trafficking children. You can't have this.
But notwithstanding the fact that she was fucking dead. The woman was dead. We were told she was dead. So like,
and one of the other residents in the project area was coming to me. Not a child, but one of the residents, and she was saying to me, but it's her mom, Lenitsa's mom, and you have to do something, but don't let Suzanne know. You have to get her back to her mom. You have to help. You can do something. And I'm already thinking, well, not if she's going to make her life worse. So I was supporting what Suzanne was doing. She was like, I'm not even letting her in. I've already told the institution director that she's not to set foot in the property again. She won't even allow the visit. And
But you've been like a dog with a bone. You have to be smelling, something bad going on here.
Yeah, so
Did you start digging deeper?
Well, all this stuff was going on. All this stuff was going on, and we were in the middle of where it came to a head was that we were in the middle of.
well, just before that,
Yeah.
something that flagged with us was for a charity who was looking to improve the lives of these children and aged out adults. While we had the pilot house rented in the city with all the facilities that were needed, and Andrea was coming over to Ireland for that summer for 2 months, I offered Suzanne the use of the house for all the other, and the 6 of the other children, to come and live in the house and have a summer. The house was great. It was very spacious. It had its own pool. It was right in the city centre. It was beside a park. It was near the hospital. Some of the kids needed some minor surgeries. They could recover there. And she said, well, will you pay for it? And I said, well, I'll pay the rent and the utilities, but you need to staff it yourself. And she said, oh, well, no, if you're not going to pay for the staff, no thanks.
Is that the way she said it?
Yep. I couldn't believe it. I kept going back going, no, but just to be clear, I will pay for the rent, I will pay for the house. Well, with Edward's money, I'll pay for the utility bills. You just need to have some staff there to look after the kids. And they could have a ball in the summer near the park, in the swimming pool, in the house, everything. And she said, no, that's fine. No, thank you.
Did that not infuriate you?
That kind of set off a trigger for us.
It did, yeah. But there was kind of the whole time you're sort of caught up in the situation. It's about the children. It's not about other people. It's not about her or.
But that
else.
would be specifically about the children.
Yeah, but whatever she does, whatever anyone does, and this is the problem with the domes. Everybody was just focused on trying to get these little girls and people out, and trying to help them or do something. So there was sort of a series of little things that happened that weren't.
We were kind of
miffed about, or
maybe they don't have enough money to staff
Yeah.
it. Maybe the charity doesn't have a whole lot of money, even though we knew they'd fundraised 12 million. But you do get caught in that bubble. You know something's wrong, but you're not quite sure what it is.
Yeah.
And then a few other things kind of happened.
Yeah. So
the girls moved in that September.
Yeah.
6 other girls.
Yeah, so we moved to the other girls moved into the house and lived with Andrea in the project house.
But the program you set up is working. It's working a treat. You have the house.
Well,
They're happier there.
Bar the fact that the house that we actually originally selected because we couldn't find. Well, it was the house that we were shown. Was just in too fancy an area. So it was
it's right beside all the embassies.
Yeah, it was too fancy a house to begin with. But basically, it was I found a house for my daughter. It was near her school, and I rented it.
Yeah,
I paid the rent.
Park.
Yeah, it was near the park, it was near the shops, near everything. It was a place that I could go and stay. There was a hotel right beside it called Diplomat. I was able to stay there when I was visiting her. Jade could go and stay and visit. The two of us could, and it was a grand house. It was grand for us as for Europeans and for me. So, but it wasn't an ideal place to have a care home because it was too flash. It was just a nice house in too nice an area. So ultimately, we had to look at getting a different house. So, because it wasn't going to be sustainable to keep that one going, and Andrea was going to eventually move back to Ireland. So, where were the other girls going to go? So, they needed a house. So, there was a house over there that Suzanne owned, and it was the house that we were brought to the first time. We were brought to that kitchen, or brought to the house. So it was my idea. I actually said to her, what about that house? She didn't come to us and sort of suggest that. I suggested, well, what about that house? I said it's got a Western toilet, it's got the sufficient rooms, it's near the orphanage, you can still avail of the services. They could go to the day services.
Wheelchair accessible.
It's wheelchair accessible. There's all sorts. Well, it wasn't fully wheelchair accessible, but there was layers a bit. But you could get them in there. And so we went and we said we started to agree to negotiate the purchase of that house. Now it was kind of coming in. It was coming in around 120,000 euros, which was an awful lot of money. We thought from Moldovan standards.
Yeah, you're looking at three bedroom house in the cities at that point in time.
Yeah,
were 60 to 65,000. You could buy a 2-bedroom apartment in the city for 30,000.
So why was it so dear?
it was just that we were told that it was a house with the services, with the conversion and all that was going to cost. And to be honest, it wasn't as much as a house in Ireland. So we were kind of going, well, okay. So you have to go through so a deposit was paid over of around €13,000 or 12.
To who?
Not quite.
Sorry.
So in order for it to be legal, we didn't want to purchase the house, so we didn't want to own it. And we had been told that laws in Moldova, if it wasn't a Moldovan citizen or Moldovan charity who would own it, it could become problematic later on when you would have it registered as a care home under the state. So at the time, we decided it would be better for us to get Outreach Moldova to purchase the house. And they would own it as the charity. And then the girls would live in it. And there would be an agreement that they would live there forever, but they couldn't bring in any family members to live there, or it couldn't be repossessed by any family members of them if they were around. And we wanted to protect the house, that they could live there forever. So the proposal was that a 10% deposit would hold the house for purchase at 135, it being with the furniture included in that price. That it was 120 plus the furniture, then to 135. What happened then was the proposed agreement was sent for board approval by Outreach Moldova's board, because the charity was going to own the house. So we were going to give them restricted funding for the purchase of that house. But I refused to transfer the money until they agreed that the charity would own it for board approval, because it was such a strange thing that the CEO of a charity was going to sell their property to their own charity. So it had to be done open plan. We were even talked about informing the regulator as well at the time to make sure it was all above board.
But we were the ones who proposed this. Like, it wasn't she wasn't trying to come to us and try to.
Yeah.
We were the one who were going to say we want to do it because it makes sense. So we agreed to go ahead and do it, but it went to the board.
Yeah. Well, first it went to their accountants and solicitors, who recommended it had to be brought up at a board meeting. It went to the board. We'd asked to meet the board members a couple of times.
To talk about it, to make sure that they were okay with it. So
didn't happen. We were being fobbed off all the time. There was a lot of back and forth by email.
Why? Why were they fobbing you off?
Don't know. We didn't know them, so we didn't know these other people. We weren't involved with them.
There was a lot of the meeting was cancelled this month, or we're not sure if they're meeting because a lot of people have to fly in from different places. Now we found out that later that was not quite the facts, but it dragged on until the December. At which point I was invited to a fundraiser of Outreach Moldova's, specifically to meet with the then chairman of Outreach Moldova, to specifically convince him about the sale of the house, the purchase of the house, from the CEO by the charity. As it turned out, he wasn't able to make that meeting, but the board did meet, and it was brought up because I insisted on no transfer until I got that agreement from the board in writing. At which point the CEO, or the chairman of the board, said he had only just found out about it, even though this has been going on 5 months at this stage. He rang Ed directly to discuss it. But he said absolutely no, under no circumstances. It just looked so wrong to be purchasing a house from their own CEO. That find a different house. They were happy for us to give them funding, find a different house, but not that one. There is no way he was going to agree to that purchase. He ended up meeting you for coffee as well.
Yeah, and he said no way.
What was he like?
A terrible nice fella, yeah. Virgil, lovely guy. So subsequently I'll tell you more about him in a minute, but great guy, very committed to the charity, trying to help. All these people were committed to the charity to help, like all the Irish directors. They were like
good people doing good things.
Yeah, good people doing good things. So anyway, she did not take.
She was raging this deal fell through.
Yeah, raging this deal fell through, and
at that point as well, I have been looking for accounts several times
of the charity.
Yeah, they also
accounts of not necessarily of the charity, but of the accounts for the funding we'd already provided.
Yeah, that's what they basically ran out of money in the project. They ran out of money in our project, which was the house that I was funding for Andrea. And not only and they had too much money for that project. They had all the money up front for the project basically, or half a year or so. They used 3 months. They used 6 months' money in 3 months, and we couldn't understand how. And there was also the other child, and it's a sponsor was also funding $2,000 a month that we found out to the same project for that child that we didn't know.
So he was funding half the rent and 2 staff members.
Yeah. And then they subsequently ran out of money. So we couldn't understand why they were running out.
They kept pressuring us to send.
You need to transfer more money. You need to transfer more money.
Who's telling you this?
The CEO.
And when you'd ask, but where's the money?
Yeah, well, that's what we get into a bun fight about it, because we're saying, look, we're not transferring you any more money because you spent 6 months worth of money in 3 months of your budget.
To see the accounts.
And the budget was flattened out as it was because of those things that we noticed. There was issues there. So you spent twice as much as you should have, provide the accounts. So we kept on asking for the accounts, no accounts.
We did eventually get accounts. I went over.
Yeah.
And there were some questionable spending on it. And when I queried them, I was emailed a different set of accounts with the changes made to anything I had queried. And I mean, not the amounts changed, completely different. So something that was put down as we bought a bed. And I would say, well, I was here when we purchased the beds, so I had paid for them with the company credit card. So you couldn't. What extra bed did you buy? I'd be provided with another set of accounts, and there'd be no bed on it. It'd be now. They needed to.
So it was just making it up as they went along.
Making it up as they were going along, and it was just kept coming. So they got very angry over the house. She got very angry over the house.
It was at that time we noticed a 13,500 transfer from the project to. It was put down. It was to Suzanne for herself, and we said, "What was that? What's that for?" And she told me then that was the house deposit
that had already transferred, even though
she
the board
transferred it directly before the project even started. She had transferred it in July of that year.
Fees.
And she was keeping it because it wasn't her fault that the house purchase didn't go through.
Yeah,
we had committed to buying it, so she was keeping it.
So it culminated in, they started.
So because it didn't go through, she just took it out of their own charity.
Yeah.
Oh, before it didn't go through.
There's emails started to fly around without including us to the board of directors saying Ed hasn't provided enough money for this charity to function.
It also
Are you getting CC'd in these?
No. Well, no, they were blind. They were in the.
No, you didn't.
I didn't get that, but they were
later
sending,
on.
Yeah,
they were also telling the children that Ed didn't have any money, and they were going to. We were abandoning them.
They were saying that to the kids.
So there was emails going to the board basically saying that, and while we were querying, saying, look, why did you spend 6 months of money in 3 months? Provide the accounts. We'll transfer money over. There's no problem. Look, we've got the money. We'll transfer it over. Just provide the information, and then we'll send it over. Just par for course, no problem. It's fine. No, nothing back. Nothing coming. And started to get annoyed and started to email the board directly saying, look, Ed's we're severely behind in this project. We haven't been given the correct amount of money. We can't function like this anymore and everything. And I was saying, well, you have been given all of the money. You've been given everything. You just haven't given the accounts, give them over. So
just to put a number on it, we were transferring €13,500 every month. For a project that was supposed to have a monthly spend of 3,500. And in December of that year, given that was coming up to Christmas, we knew the kids would need to buy presents and go shopping, get Christmas trees, do everything. Plus the fact that you would have 8 inches of snow and it'd be -10. I wanted to make sure they had enough fuel. So I had actually transferred over 37,500 in December. And she was contacting us on the 3rd of January saying there was no money left.
There was no money left. It was all gone.
And I'd given her enough money for 3 months, at least, plus extra for buying the girls who were still in the orphanage a present each.
Yeah.
So like, what are you thinking in your head, like?
Well, like we weren't thinking anything. So like we were just like at the moment, like this is where Andrea was living, my daughter was living with all of these girls, and so it come like these emails started to fire off to the board, going, they're not providing the money, so therefore we're going to be left with no thing but to shut this project down. And we're going, what do you mean shut it down? I said, my daughter's living there. I said, like, fucking, we're not going to have this project shut down. Like, we're going to fund it and keep funding it because that's where she lives.
We want the accounts.
But that's where she lives. So look, we'll sort it out. So I flew over as an emergency. I flew over and it was funny because I don't know whether that was that the occasion when I flew over, there was nobody there to meet me, and I was
yes,
yeah, it's weird.
You were abandoned.
Because like it was a freaky situation because we'd always been we were paying for all of the transport services, we were paying for all these people, and then I arrived into this country. You were
paying with three drivers and the payroll.
Yeah, and I arrived into this country and I was just arrived on my own in this airport, and like I had to hire a guide in a high ace. It was outside, and these sort of dodgy taxi drivers came up. Do you want a lift? And I was like, oh, fucking! And I was going out and driving out in the middle of the night after wrecked tire, thinking I'm going to get killed here or something like that. So I ended up a drive out to the hotel. The Hilton Hotel, Hilton lobby, and I arrange a meeting with. I have a meeting with Rita and Suzanne, and. What
was the relationship like between you?
It was getting touchy. It was getting tense then, you know. It was getting tense. And it was getting so tense before then that I started to develop other relationships with people. So I developed a relationship with the then Minister for Health, who was retiring actually.
In Moldova?
In Moldova. Like I knew she was retiring. She was retiring within weeks. So we said, look, and she was going to work for UNICEF, a lovely person. And she was really helpful for advice because I needed advice on sort of navigating.
We knew her about 3 years at this stage.
I needed advice on sort of navigating some of the political stuff. So I knew she was retiring. So I was going to see if I could engage her as a consultant to do some work.
I think we had discussed as well to separate the adoption from the project.
Yeah.
That she would come on board for that.
Yeah, she'd help us with the adoption, so it wasn't like mixed in with the charitable stuff. So, and as well, I didn't really like what I was hearing. Some stuff. I was brought to this sort of state solicitors. Well, he was a lawyer who was I was told by Suzanne he was working as the president's lawyer, who was sort of a Russian, pro-Russian lawyer. And I was told that this is the man that you need to impress because when it comes to it, if you're going to have to pay, this is who you're going to have to pay.
What do you mean?
So if you want to get this over the line, like if you want to get this adoption over the line in Moldova, you're eventually going to have to pay.
A Russian, of course.
You're going to have to pay. And I was there going, well, no, I didn't. We were getting so desperate. No, we never paid any money ever. We never. And I was uncomfortable about even being told about it. I said, why would we even? Because we were going through a process.
Made a point of letting it be known that we would never
pay anybody anything for anything. And I remember going to our political advisor, going, this was said to us that we should be paying people. And they would, under no circumstances that ever happened. That does not happen. But I was being brought to the state prosecutor saying, this is the guy that you need to schmooze. And I'm going, no. And I ended up in this meeting.
At this point, she had told you she was having difficulty with me because I was rude to the accountant. Looking for everything.
Yeah, but I ended up in the Hilton Hotel lobby with Rita and Suzanne, and I was told, you need to understand how things work in Moldova. I said, you need to pay, or nothing's going to happen for you here in this country. And you need to transfer the money for this house over
the full funding amount.
Full funding.
So she still wanted this house
€135,000. You need to transfer all €135,000 over for the purchase of this house, which I didn't realise where the money was actually going. we only found out later where all the money was going. But you need to transfer all of this money over immediately, or your interest in Moldova would be shut down. Yeah,
she didn't like the funding being handed out monthly in transfers, so she wanted the entire committed amount, and she would manage the project, and we could just stay at home.
Yeah. So I said, look,
give me your money and fuck off.
Give me your money and fuck off. So
when she said all your interests, was she insinuating?
I'll tell you what that means now. So I just said to her, look, I said, look, Suzanne, I'm really sorry. Like, I'm really sorry your board didn't approve the purchase of this house. I said, like, it's not my fault. Look, we tried to do it. We wanted to do it. I picked out the house. We said we'd fund it. I said, your board said no. And I just said, no, I can't. I'm not going to transfer the money to you. I will happily have you go off and find another house. Let's start again. Let's go find another house and let's fund that one and let's move forward. I said, but I'm not paying money in advance. I'm going to pay it through the project proposal that we all agreed in a normal way through the charity and everything was fine. So the conversation ended. I flew back. We nearly immediately lost contact with Andrea.
Once you got home?
Yeah. So basically, lost all. Now, she was on full Wi-Fi. She had like a phone. She had everything. All the girls had phones. We lost contact with her.
Well, with all the girls, all 6 of them that were living in the house, couldn't, and all the staff, which we had been training for a full week every month for about 6 months at that stage. So we knew them very, very well.
No, I don't know whether it was that day or the next day, because the days were sort of blended. The days are blended. But I understand, and this is what Andrea told me, what happened. She was collected by Yuri, the PA of Suzanne.
Andrea is your daughter.
My daughter. Yeah. Collected at 4 o'clock from school, told when she was collected that your dad's not coming back, he's left, he's not there for you anymore, you're going back to the orphanage. So she was collected from school, from the private school, brought back to the orphanage that day and told her that I wasn't and she was told I wasn't coming back. The house was subsequently emptied of everything that was in it. The staff were all cleared out and the house was shut down. Notwithstanding the fact that we were paying the rent directly to the landlord and we were paying all that separately, so there wasn't anything to do with funding. Now, I panicked at that point because we couldn't contact, and we sent money to them. We sent all the money to them for the project.
We actually did an emergency transfer of €12,000 with the promise of
please keep it going.
Another 12 in 2 days' time.
Yeah, please keep it going. So, but no, everything got shut down. So
she wouldn't even answer the phone to her own board members.
No. So I rightly got very angry and panicked, and I demanded a meeting with my friend who was friends with the chairman. And again, are all really good. The donor, who was the main guy, the donor behind the charity, was going like, "This isn't right. Like, this isn't right. What's like? No one would do that to a child. What do we could have resolved this." They were all saying we could have resolved this. It didn't have to go like this. The Irish guys were.
Like, the other donors were saying, "Well, we'll give money then if that's the problem."
Yeah, we'll fix it. So they were all saying they'd fix it. So I ended up in the house of the chairman with his wife, and I was telling them the story. And I remember being.
Is this guy in Ireland?
Yeah, he's an Irish guy. I was in Blackrock. And I remember being attacked a bit by his wife, going, "Why would you say this about her? Why would you say this about Suzanne? She's an angel. She's a beautiful person." And then she got sort of ushered out. And we kind of got...
Well, all the board members at that stage had been told you just fell out with her. And
fell out with her. It was an anger. I had a personal issue.
Because she wouldn't help you with the adoption.
Wouldn't help me. So... It just went. We ended up in a meeting there, and the board members then tried to help. Now at the time, as I said to you, I didn't trust them. I didn't like what was happening. So I developed a relationship with this other individual who was working for this UK organisation called Partnerships for Every Child, who had a sort of they were a UK NGO who had boots on the ground out there, who were very active in different programs, foster care programs, all sorts. And this woman was really helpful. She had only got out of the Minister for Health position in a week, and she said, "This is not right. Something's gone wrong here." The Moldovans started to react. We were getting phone calls from the Moldovan staff going, "We don't know why this is happening. This should never have happened." Like, Andrea's very upset.
We couldn't even confirm were the kids back in the orphanage or not.
Yeah.
And you still had no contact with Andrea?
No, we couldn't get her, but we were getting called by some of the support staff who were upset that this was after happening, and we're going like, "This is not right and it shouldn't have happened." And anyway, through jigs and the reels, we managed to get Andrea on a plane out to the Canaries with a carer that this Partnerships for Every Child, they had managed to source somebody to take her.
We had to get sort of. We had to talk to a couple of ministers to try and intervene as well.
Yeah, so we had to really pull out. We were lucky because if I didn't have that contact over there, God, I would have been absolutely.
Must have been horrific for her.
It was horrific. I know. No, we got Andrea. Like I never forget this moment sitting in the pool there. That we were in the swimming pool there, and she says, "I thought you left us. Thought you left me." So I just said so. But we didn't. So we didn't let. And it was so bad. We couldn't get anybody to work with us because the staff had been told that we were an abusive family, abusive people, that we were like Jade would be given out to the staff members and horrible to them and bossy. And so we couldn't get Moldovans to work with us to continue that sort of relationship. The average Moldova staff weren't allowed to work for us. So all the people who were previously working for us weren't allowed to work for us anymore. And then we couldn't get any new people because the rumours were put out there that we were horrific, horrible people. So we managed to get a girl who subsequently stayed as Andrea's foster carer for 2 years until the adoption finished.
But
Carolina.
in the meantime, you still had the other children who had been brought back as well.
Yeah, and who were left in
quite
the orphanage.
traumatised.
Yeah.
And what was going on with the other children in the house?
They were all moved out at the same time. They were just put back at the orphanage and told, you don't live here anymore, you live here.
And they were told that we were no longer in the picture, we weren't going to support them. So, and we were planning on travelling over just to talk to them directly. But we were told we wouldn't be allowed into the institution, and as it was a government state body, we wouldn't get past security. Yeah. So it was only through the other charity, the Partnerships for Every Child, we were actually able to get to talk to them.
Yeah.
And we actually did end up getting them a psychologist to work through the trauma with them.
Yeah, and it was just a surreal experience because we ended up working with this organisation for Partnerships for Every Child, who provided receipts, who provided accounts. And
you were there thinking, it's not every system like this. This individual.
These organisations, they were talking about these governmental, governmental.
The rules and the regulations.
They were complying with every rule and regulation, but they were a UK NGO. But the Irish UK,
well, they had become Moldovan at that point.
Yeah, the Irish one couldn't do that. They couldn't. They couldn't apparently have a bank account. They had to have a bank account in trust held by Suzanne.
So all the charity money in Outreach Moldova was put into a charity bank account in Ireland, which was all correct and ticked all the boxes and met all the regulations. But it was then transferred from the Irish account to Suzanne's own account. And at that point, the Irish jurisdiction stops. And it can't be held accountable in Moldova because they're not registered as a charity in Moldova. It's now someone's personal money in their personal account.
Right.
So it was interesting how the board kind of reacted to me.
In what respect?
Because when I met the chairman and I told him what had happened, and I told him what I suspected what was happening, they treated me as if, why are you attacking this amazing person? Why are you attacking this charity? You've obviously got an issue, a personal issue with her as a person. And we're going, what are you talking about? Like, I'm a professional. I've done this before. I don't have an issue with anybody. But I fucking did have an issue with her. She was after doing that to my daughter. It's not fair for me to say I didn't have a personal problem with her after what she did to Andrea. But the facts were the facts.
Over what would you know? You're not.
Yeah.
She's a doctor.
Yeah.
And we weren't.
Is she a doctor?
Yeah, she's an Irish doctor. She's an Irish doctor that went out there a number of years ago with to work. Her father was involved in the charity, which we've heard some stuff about. We can talk about. So she's been working out there for years. She's Irish. She's from Dublin.
She went out with an Irish aid program in 2000. It was started in Northern Ireland. They fundraised a huge amount of money, went out and fitted out all the building, put in brand new plumbing, put in a whole load of stuff. There was a huge documentary about it back in 2000, and she went out after that. Yeah,
and went out and stayed out there, and then suddenly built a life and stuff. So the board reacted really badly to me. They assumed that
Ed's a prick.
Ed's a prick. He just has a personal issue with his project wasn't going right over there. He got pissy about it. He has a problem, but basically all is right here. So the then chairman decided that he was going to go out and do an audit himself.
We had written a letter of complaint.
Yeah, we wrote a letter of complaint with all the things that we suspected around people performing different tasks. Like we were told, like Suzanne herself told us that she was claiming 3 salaries. She was claiming the Irish CEO salary.
But she was also said she was working those 3 jobs.
Yeah, she said she was working those 3 jobs, but she was working 3 jobs, so therefore she got 3 salaries. So she was getting paid for a doctor, psychiatrist, and the CEO salary.
All
so
in the same 8 hours.
All the same hours, 50, 50,
Good work
50.
if you can get it.
Yeah, so that was effectively 150,000 euros a year of a salary out of the charitable expenditure. But I don't think the board knew, I'm pretty sure they didn't know, that she was the same person and that was the person doing the same jobs. And that's the issue that we brought up with the charity, saying multiple people are doing multiple roles. And they eventually got this audit done, but they
none of them had gone out. This was now.
Did they believe you when you said that?
They didn't believe. They didn't know. We raised all of these points. Like it was around 40 points or something like that around people, the same people doing the same job, the driver, the PA, resources being spent in a particular way or being misappropriated or being like fuzzied. So we put all these complaints down and said what they had done around the budgets, the money going missing, the deposit, all this sort of stuff. So we put that all the way back all to the board.
Yeah, that was April 2018.
Yeah.
None of the board members had gone out since 2014 was the last time anyone visited.
And when you put that to them, was there surprise, shock?
The chairman decided that he was going to go out himself and have a look. Okay, and he flew out without telling anybody and did a spot audit of the payroll. So in his spot audit of the payroll, he discovered that
there was no list of staff.
No list of staff. People were claiming the same. There was people signing for the same amount for multiple payrolls.
Only first names of staff. Some staff were recorded.
The husband of
They were only
Suzanne
paid in
was claiming for a number of the salaries and collecting them.
He was on more than one salary for...
He was collecting them.
Well,
and
also
signing for
collecting to distribute to other staff.
Yeah, so signing for them about all these names of all of these staff. So when Fergal went out and had a look himself, he went and did his own audit, came back to the board and as far as I've been told, substantiated everything that I had said to the board. Subsequently, half the board resigned.
Well, his recommendation was that the charity had fulfilled its original purpose and therefore should close.
Close?
Its original purpose was to upgrade and support the medical facilities, to provide a level of care in the institution until such time the government could do it. His evidence when he went over was that the government were funding the institution. And they had already closed 2 institutions, one of the boys' home up in Orhay, which he had travelled up to visit and see the children from that institution living out in the community. Met parents who were fostered others and just required a bit of a grant to put in a ramp that wasn't kamikaze. And also spoke to other educators in the area who were putting in programs, local authorities and things like that. So he came back. What he relayed to me was that his view was that the charity had met its original remit and that the government was now putting in programs and closing the institutions, working towards closing Hinchest and having people live in the community and be supported by the local authority, which was not the remit of the charity as it currently stood. And therefore, he felt that it was only raising funding to fund itself.
To perpetuate the activities of the institution and to fund itself, to pay its own salaries of its people.
So he recommended to the board, that was November 2018, that the charity should be wound up.
So everything that when you were first brought out and everyone was brought out was really just an act to make it look worse than it was, that we need this money in.
We believe so, yeah. And we believe, actually, do you know what? I actually think that what happened was they were so successful at raising money over the years that they raised so much money that they actually ran out of ideas of what to do with it. And that they had fixed the kitchen in the institution, they had fixed this, they had fixed that, the heating worked brilliant, everything worked great in the institutions, and then the money kept coming in. 500,000 a year from donors kept coming in every single year, and that they didn't know what to do with it. And so the board, I told them everything that was happening. A good few of them resigned. A number of them stayed on who didn't believe me, didn't believe the story. They went and I was firing cannons at them. I was going heavy at them all the time, saying this is not right. There's something going on seriously wrong here. Now, in scale terms, in terms of like 12 million euros in a charity is a lot of money. If you look at some of the charitable issues that have happened in the state over the last year, like that's a lot of money. A lot of money that's gone into a project, into one institutional building. Now, in
parallel to that, we were working now with a Partnership for Every Child on the Ground and had provided funding for them. And within a few months, we had a pilot house. We had children living in it. We had children from there either going to training or education. We had a tri-party agreement with the government over a 5-year period how this project will become theirs to be self-funding by them.
Yeah, so the government basically agreed that they would take over the running of the house, which we originally set up
phases,
to do.
Yeah.
So in the couple of years, we weren't able to achieve any of this with Irish Moldova. And with the British NGO, we were able to do this really, really easily.
Is it normal for a charity to be ruled over by one person and have that much control like that?
Well, they usually have a board and governance structures and everything. This was the hilarious thing because I remember we were introduced. It was brought. The charity eventually undertook its own audit, its own internal audit. They hired an organisation to do an audit, which we were interviewed for. Never provided a copy of the report on what the findings were. Never given an opportunity to contest anything. The report basically had loads of things in it that said that we didn't give them information, but we were never actually, they never got back to us and asked for anything. Just one interview ever. And I subsequently got the report, a copy of it, in the last couple of years. And it was just, like it basically gave the charity comfort to truck on as normal, as if nothing to see here. Because the reality is they couldn't, like, unless you physically went out there and monitored the cash transactions and everything, there was no way of seeing this. What the report, the Baker Tilly report that was never published, that should be published for everybody to see in Ireland, because it's an Irish charity and this report was conducted by an Irish audit company, basically stated that for the duration of the operation of this charity, which is still going today. Well, actually, we think it might not be going today or in the last couple of days.
Wait to be seen.
Wait to be seen. But all of the money transferred to an Irish bank account, right? Transferred, which had Irish charitable status, transferred from the Irish bank account to an account in the name of the CEO.
With no oversight.
With that money was withdrawn and put in a safe in cash, okay, and distributed in cash.
That isn't normal.
So that happened,
with
and it
no
says
staffing records, no staffing contracts, no receipts for monies paid, no record of no tax paid.
Yeah, so there was never any tax returns paid for any of the staff that ever worked for the charity. Now, in the annual reports that we saw,
and the accountant.
Yeah, the charity's operations had like 100. How many staff did they have in the?
According to some of the CEO, the records on the company's registration office that was filed by Outreach Moldova. At times they had up to 150 volunteers. It varied over the years, but there were 93, 97. In some cases, it only went as low as 57 at one stage.
Which bizarre. And when we did eventually see a staffing record sheet, it bizarrely completely replicated the actual government staffing sheet of what they were employing in there. So the staffing returns that I believe the Irish public thought they were paying for was
additional staff.
70, 80, 90 staff. I figured there was around 10. I figured there was around 10 staff there with 500,000 euros a year going into it. Now that's 10 staff on Moldovan salaries, not on Irish salaries. So 10 staff wouldn't, like 500 grand wouldn't go far when you're paying 10 Irish people, 15 Irish people in tax and everything. But this was paying 10 Moldovan people, and it was 500,000 a year, and it was paying for, I don't know. And I cannot see what that charity was spending its money on. The Baker Tilly report that they submitted their own audit basically said that there was no project specifications for anything. There was no accounts or ring fence money for anything in the charity, and that was bad practice. Okay, so therefore, if a funder over here was funding £2,000 a month, like the other person was in our project, that wasn't ring fence to say this person was funding this, Ed was funding this person was funding this. It was just all going into a big blob of cash, right? So you could never say whether the money was spent on this project A or project B or project C, because it was all going into a big.
Were you ever speaking to Susan since the day in?
No, I cut off contact with her. I wouldn't talk to her again. I would only talk to the board.
Would they still be fundraising in Ireland while this is all going on?
They were still fundraising in up to a couple of weeks ago in November. They had a fundraiser on. So
that must be fair and for you.
Yeah, it was. Because I went to the charities regulator about it. I went to.
What did they say?
Well, see, the Baker Tilly report basically came out and said nothing to see here because they couldn't find anything.
They also couldn't find the accountant who had been fired before the Baker Tilly people were trying to interview him.
And it was referred to this, like the accountant was signing off on his own expense sheets, and it was portrayed like as if this accountant was this criminal mastermind. Now, I met this guy. I had lunch with this guy. This guy was around like 5 foot, really thin. He looked terrified. He just looked terrified all the time. This guy was no criminal mastermind, you know. He was a pawn. He was another Moldovan worker who was just sitting there. He was the one who had sole access to the safe, in conjunction with Suzanne, with all this money that was being transferred into it. So look, there's no evidence that anything was taken, but there was admissions by people to say that they were taking multiple salaries all of the time.
There was also the admission over the house, and the accounts with the CRO were retroactively filed to make a correction.
Yeah.
So
they basically said, that was a mistake, and they refiled the accounts and refunded the money of the deposits, because I said, I want that money back.
Oh no, before that, the actual house, so the house we were going to fund to be purchased by the charity was actually originally owned by the charity. It had been bought with charity's money back in 2005
This
or
is
6.
the house that you're saying was Susan?
Yes.
So that had already been purchased by the charity?
It had been done up by the charity. The records are all there in the CRO filings.
But if you had bought it, the money was going to Susan?
Yes, because at the time, and this is where the new board, the board who were involved when we came on board, didn't even know they had owned this house, because when it was registered in Moldova, despite it being recorded in the Irish records as being purchased by Outreach Moldova, it was registered in the land registry over there in Suzanne and her husband Victor's name. So it was owned by them.
This would put you off charities, wouldn't it?
So this came to be. This is actually, if you do a Google search on the charity about that house, there's a newspaper article that was written about it, about how it going in and out over a period of years, out in and out of the charities, and her name. So it got sold twice in and out. And
the investigative journalists found 2 other instances of houses either owned by Suzanne and her husband Victor, or her father, who was also a board member and founding member of Outreach Moldova.
Yeah. So this became there was an article about this. I went to the charities regulator. They couldn't.
And
They
the
were
police.
presented with a report that basically said we couldn't find anything because it was all done in cash. So therefore, there's no evidence. So therefore, we can't do anything about it.
There's
So
not rules that you can't use cash like that.
well, there was. You could look. Well, there was rules over in Moldova that you had to be an organisation. You had to register. You had to pay tax. You had to stop. But there was no staffing record of anybody out there. So they weren't paying tax for them. They weren't paying PRSI for them. They weren't making returns. So you could never count them. So you couldn't count them in Moldova. You couldn't count them in
It's quite clever,
Ireland.
really, because what in very black and white terms, you have an Irish registered charity who can fundraise and put money in. They put money into an Irish registered bank account. Once that leaves the Irish jurisdiction, the regulator has no power to do anything about what happens to it anywhere else. So once it left the Irish jurisdiction and became money in a bank account in Moldova, which was not a registered charity, the Moldovans can't query the bank account either because it's not a charity and therefore they can't hold it accountable. Outreach Moldova were not registered as a charity in Moldova, despite the fact that we actually became aware of this early on and funded them to become registered and to have offices, which I was brought around and shown these offices.
We're shown the offices that were funding, but they never took them.
But they didn't take them.
Never took them.
Jesus Christ.
So anyway, like all of this stuff, I went as far as I could go. I gave everything over to the authorities. We went as far as we could, but we just got
to the police.
We got to the police. We went to Interpol. We gave them all the information. They basically they came back to us and they came back to us with some feedback.
There was one thing that they said that the Outreach Moldova said our funding couldn't. They were entitled to do what they wanted with it because it wasn't restricted funding, despite the fact
even though we had given them agreements to say
it was restricted funding. I myself saw the minutes of the meeting, and I even know it was point 8 in the minutes on the agenda that they agreed that our funding would be restricted funding.
Restricted funding in charities means it can't be spent on anything else. You have to spend it. So anyway, we gave everything over. We did whatever we could. The charity basically died off in terms of they stopped fundraising for a while, for a couple of years. It was also COVID. We spent a good bit of money on PPE, and which they said they did, what we paid for.
So you still kept giving money?
Yeah, well, Andrea was still over there. We were still working on these projects to get these projects through. We were still funding we weren't funding that charity anymore. We stopped everything. We moved everything over to the NGO.
But during
Partnerships for Every Child.
we gave...
Get money directly to the institution.
So we funded the outreach social work teams to keep going to, I suppose, the people, the beneficiaries, the people who were living in social care housing who had been orphans and had been moved out of the other orphanages and institutions before it closed down, and vulnerable families. So we funded social workers to be able to visit them. We funded a program of food and basic supplies and PPE gear for 7 hospitals and the vulnerable families over there, all during COVID, which Outreach Moldova did attempt to indicate was their work, which they have a history of.
Yeah.
If we think
Are they still making money?
Hospital.
Well, look, they're as far as I've been told, I've only been told recently that they've decided to shut down in the last short period of time.
Why?
Because
it's getting hot, is it?
It's getting a bit hot, I think. But all through, there's a few little bits more about this story. All the while, we were still going through the adoption of Andrea. The adoption requirement, I had to move. One of the parents had to move out to Moldova for a period of time, so I moved out there for around 3 months and lived out there. And I just couldn't get over how stupid I was about the culture. I felt so ignorant. I just felt so stupid that this was such an amazing place. It's a gorgeous country, gorgeous people. It's really safe, real cosmopolitan social life. Like there's cool restaurants. We used to bring my daughter for dinner every Saturday night in a place called Zaxi, which was like a rooftop restaurant that did sushi. It was like a cool, like this wasn't what I was fed. It was like a cool gym they used to go to. Get into ice. I'll tell you a funny story. I got into ice water swimming and things when I was out there. Because actually at one time I brought Andrea to. Well, now it'd be a bit scary now, but there's an area called Transnistria, which is separated by a river from Moldova. It's basically Russian territory and Moldovan territory, and it's like a seaside little place there. But like it's Russians on the other side and things. But it's a big long river, and I decided I love sea swimming and things. So I said I'm going to swim to the other side. So I was out there one day.
Brave.
Yeah, I swim to the other side. Yeah, so I swim to the other side and I swim back and everything. And I said, for the laugh, I'm the first Irish person to swim from Europe to Russia for the crack across this river. And then I was telling the people in the NGO, you're a crazy bastard. You could have been shot in the water. Like, you're just swimming into sort of Russian territory.
Really, could you?
Yeah, you could be shot. Well, they were joking. Maybe they were joking.
Could have been an international
incident of the Irish guy getting shot in the river from swimming from one side to the other. But like this,
with 3 orphans on his back.
Yeah. But amazing food, amazing people, really funny. Really, it's funny because an Irish person, when you go and you smile at them and everything, they just think there's something wrong with you. You think, this fella's a bit crazy, like something wrong with him if you smile, but then when they realise that you're Irish or whatever and you're smiling, then they go completely the opposite. They go from completely dour to really, really super friendly and real. They want to talk to you. And like, Andrea, you've been out with your dad.
Practicing their exam. My dad comes on trips with me.
Yeah.
Because he has a great time. Like, he's 80.
Yeah.
And I go off to work while I'm there, and he goes off wandering around the city, and he always comes back with stories. And he's met. First time I brought him, I'd been travelling over about 2.5 years, and I brought him on one of the trips. It was a short time for 4 days. And I stay in the same place. I get to know the hotel staff and all that. And the first day, I literally come back and they're like, Mr. Roy, is he with you again? I'm like, seriously, you're not worried about me coming back? I don't get this celebration every time I arrive. But yeah, they kill me if I don't bring him. They love him.
Yeah, but they're just they're just lovely people. But I just felt like such a stooge that I was just...
You were duped.
Fed this whole sort of thing of this dangerous place and don't go out at
You
night.
were duped.
I think so. I was fed this line and story that this was a deep, dark, depressing, horrible place and that you don't go outside, it's dangerous. These people don't look after their children. They don't look after... And these were amazingly proud people. And when the Moldovans started to hear that people were selling that story in Ireland, they were getting really pissed about it.
Did any of them...
They were getting really pissed about it.
Yeah.
Did anyone, after you knew and found out a little bit more, have anything to tell you about...
Yeah.
Well, just before you go there, just to tell you, asked, was there any fundraising being done? So I've just looked at the CRO filings there. So for 2023, 251,000 and change was fundraised. And 162,997 was spent on management and administration.
Fuck.
Not care.
This is their accounts.
Management and administration.
Yeah. So we continued on our journey in Moldova and still kept putting the care homes in place. We got a great relationship going with this organisation. I thought they kind of, I thought she went away, that she kind of, like I didn't get where I wanted to go. I wanted to stop them fundraising because I didn't believe they were spending the money the way they should have been out there. And I was trying to dissuade Irish people from putting their money into this because I didn't think it was real.
And when you did, you were being told you were being a dick.
Well, yeah.
Well, people were being told you're only doing it.
Yeah, I'm only doing it because I'm vindictive. But like the reality, you couldn't see where this money was going. So there was better places to spend money in Moldova than there. You could spend it with the English NGO and get receipts and get accounts and get visibility and project reports and everything like that. It was incredibly good value for money as a donor. But you put it into an Irish charity and you were basically being fobbed off and not given any information at all. So
the Moldovan guys that we're working with now, we have 2 houses. 6 of the girls are fully employed after coming from an institution. They're making their own money. They're about to become fully independent and be separated from the orphanage and come under the care of the local authority. They're flying.
Yeah, absolutely flying.
And that could have been done 10 years ago.
Yeah. And the reality is 12 million euros. I think I paid 40,000 for one of those houses that those girls are living in now. 12 million euros would have housed every single person in that orphanage and had that closed around 10 years ago.
We since found out they're like currently...
So when you're explaining all this, you're not talking out your arse, you've done it. And doing it.
Yeah. I could have got all of those children out of that orphanage for way less than that, and rehomed them and had them in independent living many years ago. And it wasn't
We've even supported the setting up of a foster care system. With USAID funding as well. The Moldovan charity has been doing that.
Yeah.
And there are 59 children now in institutional care who are all set to go out to foster care.
Yeah, so we've been working over the last few years about closing that facility down and trying to get all the people who can. Like, there's going to be high medical need people who need intensive. They need a service to go to.
And you don't want the facilities to go to waste, so it just could become a centre of excellence for
or a day
for
service or so. Like, and that's what happened. Like, institutions, like I was supporting the closure of institutions in Ireland back 20 years ago with transitioning people out into care. So they can still do it over there. There's still people living there who can move out, but it's going to be a slower process. So,
what would you love to see happening?
in terms of what? In terms of the...
You've been putting a lot of effort into this for the last while. Money, emotion.
Well, I thought things had stopped.
Time.
I thought things had stopped. I thought they kind of went away with their head between their legs, and they did go quiet. And then they started to fundraise again, and
Well,
they're fundraising.
they have a whole new board.
Yeah, and I didn't want... They've completely replaced their board, bar one or two. All the original people have retired or they've resigned. When they got the report saying everything was in the clear, they all resigned.
And you've never say sorry about that, Ed?
No, there was like... No one wants to... Look, these people didn't do anything wrong. They were all trying to help. They were all trying to do a good thing. They were all trying to help children, like, but then they didn't want... No one wants to be tarnished with association with a charity that's done this shit, who's basically done things that shouldn't have done, or is like there's fuzziness over money or anything else. So these people,
they're emotionally invested in. They spent 10 years giving money. They want to know that money made a difference, because they don't want to feel.
Still, you'd imagine
duped as
when everyone's been duped, and it looks like it's one or two people always doing the dupe, and how are they still doing it?
Well, look, I've no proof that anybody was duped to any. I can just.
You don't think you were duped?
I believe I was duped. I believe money was going missing left, right, and centre. I believe that it was a concocted reality to try extract money out of the Irish fundraising scene, and there was no accountability over the money that was paid out over there. Now, you said to me about, have you talked to other people since? It's funny because you're standing here on an island and you're thinking, this is the experience I've had, until one day you just so happen to be talking to a guy who works in I'm involved in a brewery, and the brewer he actually didn't stay on, he moved on, but props up and went, oh, I'm married to a Moldovan girl. And I says, oh, like, I travelled out to Moldova 20 years ago on a motorbike and did a motorbike fundraising expedition, right? And I raised 25 grand or 30 grand, right? And those fuckers spent that money on a Jeep. And so this guy's having this conversation with me, and I just bump into and says, I went all the way out with all of this money, and they spent it on a Jeep that she's driving around in.
No way.
That's what I said. Same charity, different guy in Ireland. Presumably he'll talk about it if he's asked. That happened. Another day, I'm on the phone, and I want people to know in Ireland that this is not right. Stuff is not going on right here. So I'm having a chat to somebody on the phone. I said, I was in Moldova, didn't have a really good time. And the lady on the phone in this charitable organisation, I won't name her, breaks down, says on the phone and says, I don't know if I want to talk about this. I was out there. I go, what? And I said, I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to talk about this. And kind of shut me down. She eventually had a conversation with me about how she was out there with a big group of volunteers in 2007, 2008. And they had the same issues as we had about misappropriation, about the funds travelling. They had fundraised. There was a problem with Irish Aid.
Yeah.
Or was it Irish Aid?
Yeah.
They had been out there as volunteers. They had some association with Irish Aid. The
Department of Foreign Affairs had just committed to providing funding for it. up to 500,000.
Yeah, so he had a load of Irish volunteers who ended up out there who had the same concerns as I did back in 2007 about the same house being transferred out of the charity ownership into personal ownership or back and forth, but also, more disturbingly, had uncovered the abuse of a young girl in the orphanage by one of the founders of the charity, a man, and had gone to Interpol with it and had gone to all the authorities about it. And
what kind of abuse?
Sexual abuse, prolonged sexual abuse by one of the founders who's now dead, alleged sexual abuse of one of the children who was 12, actually 13, sorry, in the orphanage in this project. So I was told about this, was broken down. She broke down on the phone telling us all about how they had tried to stop everything and tried to go to the authorities. They couldn't find the girl who was at the center of this, and it didn't go anywhere because they couldn't verify.
There was an internal review with Irish Aid and the complaint that several of the volunteers signed when they came back. Nobody's seen the report. It was never published, but I do know that the Department of Foreign Affairs stopped the funding.
Yeah,
they didn't provide the funding they had said they would.
So if you Google Irish Aid, Irish Moldova, there is newspaper articles about this that's happened, and it talks about some of the same stuff that happened with us. So you've got three separates of different groups of people. There's me, there's the other fella, and this other group of volunteers who all have the same issue 5, 6, 7 years apart, again and again, who've come back. But basically this individual on the phone broke down and said, I can't. I tried to get her to come with me on the journey and to disclose everything that she had talked about with them back when I was bringing this to the board, and they said, they were burnt out. It had been a very difficult point in their life. They couldn't do it again, and they just didn't have the strength to do it again. And I told them at that point I wasn't going to give up on this. I wasn't going to give up on this project. I wasn't going to give up with this person or this being untold. People needed to be told this. So we heard all of this information, but we didn't have the actual hardened facts, as in we didn't have the actual information. We heard the rumours until we were sent a copy of the video testimony of this 16-year-old girl. So recently, I was sent a 22-minute video on VH. It was originally taken on VHS. What happened was the Irish Aid volunteers who discovered the abuse of this particular man went out and found this girl called Alicia, found her in a different jurisdiction, and videoed her testimony about what happened to her when she was 12 or 13. And I have that video now. I've sent it, and it's really, really disturbing. So the man is now dead. He is one of the founding members of that charity. The video was 22 minutes long, and it disclosed the graphic sexual abuse of that child over many, over. I'm not sure the specific timeline. Actually, the video I'd be telling a lie if I did, but it's talking about over the 22 minutes how she was groomed from the time she was 13, and that she'd never had sex before with anybody, never had any physical sexual contact with anybody, and how she was touched by this individual. It's outlined in the video. It's been translated and subtitled, but it also alleges in the video that the extensive sexual abuse was disclosed back then, and in the video it says that she was moved 200 kilometres away to a different institution where they subsequently lost track of her. So back in 2007, 2008, this child, it was uncovered by a bunch of Irish Aid volunteers that this was happening to her, and they interviewed her back then, and they haven't come public about this. Now, this is back in the days where there was no social media. There was no way of publishing that sort of information. and that information going public. But it's a different day today. If that information was if people had seen this, if people see this video and see this child talking about what happened to her, I know she's describing places I've been in this video. She's describing the office. She's describing key people. This is not made up.
And her fear for her younger sister.
Yeah, and her fear for her younger sister about what might happen to her if left there. Now, if you listen to this video, if you see 22 minutes of this video, you can, and you've been there in that location, you know that office, you know the furniture, you know the location, you know the people who are referred in this video, and this young person, 16, is making a video testimony of exactly what happened to her down to the detail of this. If it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck,
More than likely a duck.
it's a fucking duck. So this person's now dead, but it raises questions that whether the CEO of the charity did in fact know about this, and what they did about it, and what
they didn't do.
What they didn't do about it. Was it investigated? Were they tracked down? Did they get their testimony properly disclosed? What happened? Now, this video, as soon as it was sent to me, I have a duty I'm a social care worker. I sent this directly to the authorities of Moldova. I've sent it to the appropriate social services over there for them to investigate, and it's with them now. So let them do it.
Is this mind blowing for you? The way this can keep going on over years and years and years.
It's mind blowing to me.
Is this happening all the time?
It's mind blowing to me. Look, it's mind blowing to me. Look. There's going to be. I created a private healthcare organisation in an era where we're competing against charities, and charities, look, they're well-meaning, but they're inefficient by large. Now, we've got loads of abuse on social media about that, but by and large, everybody knows that they're not as efficient. If you go into Portlaoise Hospital, and you go into the Beacon, it's a different experience. You know, it's a different experience going into two different charities just because one's the way they're managed differently, and so you expect in charities what.
They're not held as accountable.
Yeah, but you expect in charities that they're not going to be as efficient, maybe, but they're all well-meaning. They're trying to do the right thing. But you wouldn't expect the level. Look.
So, as someone listening to the story, it sounds like this woman sounds like a very vindictive, nasty person.
Oh, sure. Look, I can't. I don't like her, but like I can talk about the fact. I base my opinions based on how she's treated my daughter and what she did to her at that time.
Are they well off?
I don't know. I don't know what assets they have or who they are. I don't know. I never got involved in their sort of personal affairs. But
I'm a private investigator. I know it. You come to me after this. We'll find out.
Yeah, but look, like I said to you, charities are well-meaning. Like, what I can't understand is that how anybody thinks that 12 million euro can transfer in cash to a safe and be distributed in an audit by a chairman of a charity in their own report of their own activities and say, yeah, it's not great, but it's not wrong. And that's what their own report said, was that it's not ideal.
Well, Fargo's report was quite adamant that this is not right, this is not correct, and this shall not be done going forward. But once he resigned, then I think the whole thing about the Baker Tilly report just didn't do what it should have done.
So we don't know. Like, I don't know what's happened since. You know, I do know that I disclosed that I had some of this information, and to them.
Did you disclose it to someone that's still running the charity?
No, I disclosed it to them, so they know I have it now. So, and the people who were I'm not going to use it against them. I sent it directly to the authorities for them to consider, but they're talking. This is I've seen a deposition by a child on a video of what happened to them in a location that I know, talking about people that I know, and it's chilling. Do you want a happy ending? That's not a sexual thing now.
No, damn it! It was going to be challenging with G all watching, but I would have gave a go at it.
Do you want to talk about the baby hospital before you end it?
Oh yeah. There was actually, it was funny because we were the baby hospital. Andrea uncovered like the baby hospital, we were marching around and talked about that. This is like what we're funding.
Yeah, it turns out that there wasn't hundreds of babies. There were 18.
So where did all the other babies go?
They had all been taken care of and gone to other places to be looked after. But there was a donor who had fundraised had a fundraiser annually for the previous 10 years to fund the baby hospital with nappies and cots and blankets and toys and all that's needed for these babies that the government was already paying for. So it never, ever went in there. There was on-site a daycare centre to encourage people not to give their children up to the state. It was a newish programme. So I spoke to the head of that programme, who was always annoyed when we went to visit. And we subsequently found out she only spoke Romanian and Russian. So she knew people who were being brought around and spoke to in English were possibly being told that this was being funded by Outreach Moldova, which is what we were told and when we were shown around. And later, when we worked with the other charity, I asked, could we go speak to her with a translator? And it turns out that Outreach Moldova tried to stop her putting a programme in place, fought her for 3 years. She stuck with it. She got the programme up and running and was being funded by USAID and had done all the work. But this was presented as an Outreach Moldova project. She told me that there were possibly 100 quid's worth of toys in there that were Outreach Moldova and one small desk and chair for the children to use.
They all have their wrappers still on them.
Yeah. And this was presented always to us as an Outreach Moldova project, that it catered for children who were from birth to 3 or 4 and needed funding, because this is why children were in cots and not crying, and because they weren't picked up because there was no staff to do it, and we needed staff and we needed to fund. And this guy particularly only fundraised for this hospital for 10 years and not a single penny went into it.
And they'd be happy to talk to
she's
Absolutely
very,
lovely.
very happy to talk.
Yeah. So
But
this
she
isn't...
received no funding.
Not the happiest then I was looking for.
Yeah. So,
Well, we did have fun buying out the toy shop.
yeah.
Come here,
So,
happy ending,
happy
wise.
ending. Happy ending. Eventually, we were successful in breaking down the barriers of adopting Andrea. So that took 4 years from start to finish. I would say if anybody is ever thinking about adopting a child, start now. Don't wait to even think about it, because there'll be
Such a
so
long
many
process.
barriers in front of you to ever get there in the end. It took us from the time she was 9 until I think 14 to get her.
Can you remember the day it was official?
Yeah. I remember being in court. Jade was on video call at the time because we couldn't be both in the country for it. She had a video dial into court. We got the approval. The longest 10 minutes of my life was the dower.
When the video link wouldn't work.
No, well, that. But also the dower immigration control officer at the airport, who was basically... I was there with Andrea and I was waiting to get on the plane, and basically just standing there at the immigration control with a letter stamped by the judge that said that she was adopted in Moldova, because you adopt her in Moldova and you bring her back, and then you register the adoption in Ireland, and you're supervised by a social worker, all this sort of shit for years. But basically I had this stamp, and it's funny. It's funny but emotional. But you're basically at this dower, the desk with this. There was a woman. She was a real gruff woman, Moldovan. She was going through the paperwork for 10 minutes, looking at me, just standing there in security, the only people in security, and she basically hands me the stamps and goes, "Good luck."
That's it.
And get on the plane, flew out of the country and never looked back. Yeah, we'll not look
and
back.
we were trying to get you in because it was the last flight before the COVID restrictions stopped all flights from midnight, and you got in at 10 to 12.
Yeah.
Or didn't Andy himself and Andrea would have had to go to the hotel for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Isolation.
Being isolated. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
fuck.
So now, Andrea, this is I can't say she's just a normal grumpy teenager. She goes to school locally. She's fluent in 3 different languages. She's living a normal life.
I can't even speak English.
Yeah, she's living a normal life and with her 3 brothers and sisters. And
Does she remember much of it?
She does. She's a lot of flashbacks about what happened and about what happened to her as a child. And she was very lucky in that she had a mother who was alive until she was 3.5. So she was nurtured and her mother died. But she was basically really, really well looked after as a baby. And she's trying to encourage her to sort of maintain her culture and to keep everything up and going. And her language, she still talks to her friends every day out there, and she talks to them every day, rings them, maintains that. So she's an Irish citizen. Still very, very proud of her Moldovan culture, but she's a blessing and she's a happy child.
What would you love to see happening?
I'd love to see no more money from Irish people going to projects that aren't properly accounted for. Because that's Irish taxpayers' money.
And people trying to do their best and they're getting fucked over, really, by greedy people.
Well, look, I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but everybody can make their own determination of what I said today and what happened to us when we were out there. So,
well, I think you put on great work. You're good people, and it's great to see good people putting it out there because bad people shouldn't get away with stuff. There's also, I think I'm starting a fund. It's a House and GT3 fund. If you want to manage that, I'll get you 2 to manage it. No bother. Anyway, thanks a million for coming in.
no problem.
And we'll, do you want us to put up any links for anyone to look at anything? Or?
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, we'll have a look. Yeah.
Thanks a million. Appreciate you.
Thank you.